Press our microphones.
Progress.
Thank you, Sean.
That's why.
Right, you're good to go.
Okay, good. I don't start with that. I'll call the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting to order. Push your button. I looked at when they were automatic. The first item is a roll call. Elzad here. Southern here. Steve Hudacek here. We have 4 regular members here, which is a quorum. The first item is a public hearing. Spec 277. You read the ad.
Notice is hereby given. The following public hearing will be held on September 27th, 2022 at 7 p.m. in Community Room 2, Town Hall Annex 134 Groton 1 Point Road. And virtually via the Zoom platform to hear the following. Special permit number 3770 Yetter Road in 270015625780 RU-40 zone. Renewal special permit number 321 for excavation, importation, processing, and sale of earth products, including periodic crushing operations. Review is per sections 5.1-2.e and 9.4 of the zoning regulations. Richard A. Whittle and Frederick R. Whittle, applicants and owners. A Zoom meeting link will be posted to the town's website. Meetings calendar can be attended by visiting www.zoom.us. Webinar ID 828-8881-0270, password 641341, or by phone 1301-715-8592. Applications are on file, available for public inspection. During normal business hours at the Planning Department, 134 Groton 1 Point Road, Groton, Connecticut, dated the 16th day of September 2022 in Groton, Connecticut.
So we'll go over quickly just a brief process of the public hearing. We'll hear from the applicant first, and have staff make their report, and then open it up to the public for any input they have, and then to the commissioners for any comments or concerns they have or questions. Keep rotating around until all the information is out on the table and we have all the questions answered. Because once we close the public hearing, we cannot accept any additional information. We'll start with the applicant. I'd like to make their presentation. Will you say your name and address?
Sure. Good evening, everybody. For the record, my name is Attorney Jeffrey Londrigan of the law firm of Conway, Londrigan, Sheen, and Monaco. And for the last 15 years, I've had the pleasure of representing the Whittle family and Willow Spring Farms. We're here this evening to make a renewal of a special use application that was originally granted to my clients back in 2012. Just for the benefit of any new members or for the public and to create the record, I just want to take a moment to go through at least the history of how we're here today, just very quickly as best I can. So back in 2007, which seems like a lifetime ago, the town CEO issued a cease and desist order to the Whittles regarding the sand and gravel operation that was being conducted at the subject property. At the time, the CEO determined that the property was validly pre-existing non-conforming for excavating of material that was on site and screening that material that was on site, and also selling that material that was generated from on site. The CEO determined that the property was not pre-existing non-conforming for bringing material or importing material from off-site to the site to be processed, and it was not pre-existing non-conforming for crushing of material from any source, whether it was generated from on-site or brought from off-site. My clients took an appeal to the ZBA. And the good news is we convinced 3 members of the ZBA that my clients were pre-existing non-conforming for all 4 uses. The bad news is under Connecticut law, we needed 4 people to be convinced that we were pre-existing non-conforming. So subsequently, an appeal was taken to the Superior Court. And in the process of that litigation, a settlement was reached between the town, the ZBA, and my clients in 2011, which was a stipulated judgment. I don't know if it's part of the underlying record, so I have it here, and I'll just submit it as a record. So it's in there, just a copy of what was agreed to in 2011.
Oh, good, okay.
So the stipulation, in essence, gave my clients the right to import material from offsite and to crush material from any source, their own material from the property or property product brought in from offsite with certain parameters. And those parameters could be made more restrictive by the then zoning commission prior to the joining of the 2 commissions as part of an application for a special use permit to conduct all 4 activities on the subject property. Although we were pre-existing non-conforming, Connecticut state law does permit a zoning commission to have some type of oversight on even pre-existing non-conforming uses. And so we came in 2011 and 2012 for a special use permit. We received that special use permit to conduct all 4 activities at the subject property, and a neighbor at the time took an appeal to Superior Court. That case was finally resolved in 2015. And then during 2015, my clients went ahead and took care of all the preconditions in their special use permit. They were to put a conservation restriction on 60 acres of their property, that it can only be used for farming purposes while the gravel operation is in existence. They had to put markers on the perimeter of that 60 acres. They had to build a berm on top of some property on the eastern side of their property and plant trees and other plantings on top of that to better screen and block the operation from neighbors to the east. They had to block off an access road for some property from Getter Road, et cetera. So they took care of all of that. The special use permit application finally goes into effect September of 2017. A condition of that special use permit is renewal at least every 2 years. So we came back in 2019 and while the original permit says it's up for renewal or maybe up for renewal every 2 years, the commission does have the discretion if it didn't want to do it every 2 years. And that's what you did back in 2019. We got a 3-year permit, which brings us to today. The primary reason probably behind all of this is, why do farmers need to have a sand and gravel operation? For at least 4 generations of the Whittle family, the sand and gravel operation has been run at the subject property. The farm is 5 generations old, but at least since the 50s, this sand and gravel operation has been run. And the reason for that is it's actually quite difficult to make a living just farming in this day and age. As you'll hear from my client Rick in a little bit, you can't sell enough dollar cucumbers at the farm stand to make ends meet for the entire year. So the income that's generated by the sand and gravel operation supplements the farming operation. It permits the Whittle family to continue to farm 300 plus acres here in town, including 5 acres on the subject property. The subject property has corn, pumpkins, and other produce that is rotated through on a seasonal basis. As we'll address later this evening when we talk about the complaints received from the town, A lot of the complaints then when we did the research is that people are hearing the farming activities going on, which are done very early in the morning or late at night for any reasons. When Rick talks, is probably going to tell you about honeybees. It's fascinating, but you're going to learn why you have to spray real early in the morning or late at night. So without this sand and gravel operation, the farm couldn't survive. And the 300 acres would need to be sold off for development, probably because the farm wouldn't be able to continue on. This operation is so intrinsically important to the farm that the applicants, my clients, didn't blink when back in 2012, they were asked to put 60 acres into a farm conservation restriction. They asked where we sign up. So that is how important this operation is to the continuing of the farming operation. And I'll tell you what I told the ZBA in 2007 and the Zoning Commission in 2011 and what I told most of you in 2019. The Whittles are farmers and they simply want to continue farming all of their property here in town. And the only way they can do that is with the continuation of the sand and gravel operation at the subject property. Now, I know many of you are experienced commission members, but for the purposes of creating the record, I have to sound like an attorney for a little bit. I'll make it as brief as possible. This is a renewal of special use permit that was granted and approved by this commission. And as such, on this renewal, you're acting in your administrative capacity rather than your legislative capacity. In your legislative capacity, when you're reviewing text changes, map changes, those types of applications, in your legislative capacity, you have tremendous discretion to decide whether or not this is a good thing or a bad thing. When you're looking at special use permits, you're acting in your administrative capacity and your discretion is a little bit restrained. You've already determined that something is okay to happen, but the application has to meet certain criteria that's already been established. But if an applicant meets those criteria, then your ability to deny the application is a little bit hindered. And so it's respectfully submitted that there has been no change in the conditions at the subject property since our initial application in 2011, the renewal in 2019, or today. The extent of the sand and gravel operation has remained constant for the last several years. As indicated in our supplemental narrative, the amount of material processed and sold has been roughly about the same. By way of some house cleaning, I have to just correct one thing in the narrative. You know, cutting and pasting and save as is fantastic for making a big job a lot smaller. When I saved as and was updating the narrative from 2019 till today, I had a sentence in there that talked about a majority of the importation was coming from Town of Groton Public Works for the senior center and that type of work. Obviously, that was happening back in 2019. That's not happening today. The Town of Groton is bringing material to the property and buying some property material from the site, but not to the extent that it was back in the day. So I just wanted to correct that little bit of a record from what our narrative said. All the stockpiles are in the same location. No interior changes have been made to the property as far as the location of the cornfield or the pumpkin patch or the interior roads or the irrigation pond. Everything's laid out the same. The location of the temporary rock crusher that can come in 50 days a week, it's in the same location. With one exception, which I'll get to in a moment, we're really asking for nothing more than a continuance of the present special use permit with the same terms, conditions, and restrictions. The one modification request is that in preparing our renewal application, it was determined that stockpile D is out of tolerance. There is a requirement, and I don't know why Mr. Davis, who was working for the town at the time, decided to use mean high tide as sort of the baseline for elevations at our site. But he did, and so all stockpiles have to be below 175 feet mean high tide. So all of them are, with the exception of stockpile D right now. Similar to what happened in 2019, where there is the unprocessed material over on the west side of the property. It was determined that that stockpile was at elevation 201, but it happened to be exactly at the same grade as all of the existing property to the west. So it was at grade with everything else and then sloped down into the bottom of the pit. And so this commission actually amended in 2019 to allow the unprocessed stockpile to be no higher than 201, which it is today as well. Similarly, what we've had on the east side where the sand pit is, that when it was shot, it was at elevation 185. But I know in the backup material, I had taken a photograph of myself standing on top of the pit and looking back towards the east, southeast. And there's actually a road that goes up behind that sand pit. And you can see from that photograph that actually the top of that sand pit is at the same elevation as the properties to the east and southeast, back towards the old Turner property, which is in the distance of the photograph that I took. And so for that, we're asking for some relief or your consideration on an exception, which would allow stockpile D to remain at no more than 185 feet. For two reasons. One is it's at the elevation grade of everything else around it to the east and beyond, but also it is between the primary operation going on down in the pit, and it's directly in between that operation and the neighbors to the east. So we think it adds a little bit more of a wall, if you will, of sound beyond that. It's not as tall as the berm and the earthen berm and the vegetation that we had to plant 10 years ago, which has really grown up, but it does add another layer of audio buffering that we would ask for your consideration with. If, however, you are disinclined to acquiesce to that request, all that we would ask is 90 days to be able to take stockpile D from 185 down to 175. Because of its location, just taking off that top 10 feet, we just need a little time to do that. But we think there are valid reasons and legitimate reasons why maybe keeping the elevation at no more than 185 makes sense in light of all the other properties around. What I'd like to do is just submit a blown up version of the topography of stockpile D, just so that you can see where the different elevations are. You'll see where the lines are very tight together is obviously the slope. Where the lines are very far apart is that driveway that's indicated in the photograph that's in the background material. So.
Right over against the line.
So I will point out one thing as far as the top of the pile is concerned. You'll see that there are some notations that talk about there being above 185. There's a 192.15 and a 189.96. Basically, at the top of this driveway, there are berms that act basically as curbing, if you will. Because trucks are going up here, they want to make sure that they don't then have a rapid descent down where those topographical lines are very close together. So the primary top of it is at that 185.58, and in that general vicinity, those other points are just taken on top of the berms that go around to make sure that nothing goes down. OSHA is very appreciative of the fact that those berms are up there around as the vehicles are coming up and down. One other thing that I think would be beneficial and we'd ask for is just some clarification on what a holiday is. Since we were back here in 2019, one thing that we do have is we cannot operate on holidays, and that's fine. But in the last 3 years, there have been some new holidays that have been adopted both by the state and by the feds. Juneteenth being one of the examples. And so just to make sure that we're on the same page as the town, it would be helpful, we think, to identify the specific holidays that we would not be operating. Right now, it just says holidays. And then, of course, well, does Arbor Day count? Does Groundhog Day count? Clearly July 4th counts. So some clarification there would be helpful if you were so inclined. I just want to take a moment now to address the log that was submitted by the zoning enforcement officer about complaints. We're aware that there have been complaints over the years, going back to 2007, when we were over in the large conference room in front of the ZBA. There were people complaining about noise and so forth and so on. And we get it. This is a pre-existing non-conforming commercial operation in the middle of a residential zone. So there's going to be some friction. I will state this, however, in 2019, when we were getting ready to come in for our first renewal, we started getting notices from the town of Groton staff about complaints about 6 to 8 months out. Before that, there was really kind of quiet, but we're leading up to our renewal. And so complaints into the town seem to increase. Out of the several complaints filed by the town, there was one that we felt was legitimate. An old-time customer had come into the site via Yetter Road, whereby we're required to have all truck traffic come in and out via Route 184. Only the farm equipment that's coming from our other fields can access this property through Yetter Road. Someone who had not been to the site in a while came through Yetter Road. He was informed of the problem, and that particular person has never violated that stipulation again. But all the other complaints that were coming in about operating too soon, or noise, or trucks firing up, when we investigated them, they were all related to the farming activities that are going on this property. Again, we have to spray early in the morning. We have to water after the sand and gravel operation ceases. And again, on the sand and gravel side of things, we are entitled to operate 7 in the morning to the afternoon. A lot of the complaints were hearing noises around 7:30, 7:45, and hearing truck traffic. The one 8 to 4 restriction is when the crushing is happening, when that happens those 50 days out of the year. But 8 to 5, excuse me, 8 to 5. But we are entitled to operate the sand and gravel as early as 7 a.m. And when we were looking at it, we saw that most of the complaints about the noise were attributed either to the sand and gravel operation or the farming operation. So now we get our approval in 2019. We go forward. It's been fairly quiet until the beginning of this year, when town staff starts calling and receiving complaints again about noise. And once again, a little bit of deja vu all over again, as Yogi Berra once said. There was one old-time customer who did recently come in from Yetter Road. Again, didn't know about that restriction. We've set him straight. But all of the other complaints were hearing trucks and equipment and noise. When we investigated them, were attributed to the farming operation or the sand and gravel happening after 7 o'clock. So, starting early, there was a complaint about starting at 7:35 or 7:45 in June, or 7:30 in June 10th, or 7:57 a.m. On June 25th. When we looked at them, they were all related to the sand and gravel, which started at 7, or farming. So When the complaints do come in, we think we've been responsive to town staff. We've investigated it. We've questioned my client's employees about what was going on the particular day that the complaint comes in. And almost all the time, it's relating to a farming activity. Again, we understand we're in a residential zone doing a pre-existing non-conforming commercial activity, and there's going to be some friction. And we try and do our best. And to that, to demonstrate that point, I'd like to state for the record and for the benefit of those in attendance, which I did in 2019 as well, other steps that my client has voluntarily taken in an effort to be respectful to the residential neighbors and the surrounding area. Number one, no more recreational firearm target practice. Going back about 10 years, gun owners were permitted by the applicants to use the quarry or the pit, if you will, for target practice. It would take place on weekends, typically Sundays. The neighbors complained, and despite that being permitted, according to the local police department, my client has not given permission to anybody for that anymore. Number four, my client ceased using a bird cannon to protect the crops. There's like I said, there's several acres of corn grown on this property. There's even more grown right across the street. My client does have the right to use a bird cannon to scare off the crows, and he is elected not to do that in an effort to be good neighbors. You can imagine hearing that going off rather regularly. This action has resulted in approximately 40% of all crops from these fields being lost to the crows. But again, my client, in an effort to try and be a good neighbor, has not used that bird cannon for several years now. My clients have put in additional buffering and screening to the east. We had to plant one up on the top of the ridge line and put a lot of stuff down there. My clients have created a second berm of vegetative buffer down closer to the elevation of the properties to the east. The berm is approximately 6 feet in height, vegetation all on top of it. So again, just trying to give that visual and sound buffering to the neighbors to the east. My clients have ceased using a pre-existing non-conforming sand screener. It's rather a large piece of equipment that's up closest to the east side of the property. The plant is very close to the neighboring properties, was used a lot. It's at least 60 plus years old, extremely loud. Up until when the original special use permit was issued by the town, it was the primary tool used by my clients. They've stopped using that sand screening plant. They've moved any screening farther away, more to the west, down into the floor of the pit, if you will. And we've tried to limit the use of backup warning vehicles, the backup beepers. Whenever possible, my clients were disconnecting the backup warnings to try and limit that sound as well. I will note that OSHA recently came to the site and did a little bit of inspection, and they were none too pleased to find out that there were some backup beepers that were not plugged in. So we have subsequently plugged those back in. I did notice that one of the more recent complaints from the neighbors was hearing a backup beeper that was after OSHA's visit to the site. But where possible, we've tried to limit sounds from the trucks. So in conclusion, you've listened to me ramble on for far too long. It's respectfully submitted that the renewal application be granted. There have not been any changes in circumstances, we believe, in the last 3 years from when we were before you and the permit was renewed in 2019. Along the lines of the stockpiles, we ask for your consideration for stockpile D, not to exceed the elevation of 185 feet. Regarding the complaints, I think I've addressed that sufficiently. At the end, we want to be good neighbors, but at the same time, we need to preserve the livelihood of my clients to be able to farm. And this operation is the financial driver that permits the farm to exist. Now, we believe that you're going to hear some opposition this evening. We believe there might be some issues about importation of materials, what was meant under the special use permit. We have answers and responses to all that. I can walk you through all of that, but I thought it made more sense to first hear what might come forward, and then we can address that issue and any other complaints that might be brought forward by the public that's here this evening. And if there aren't any other questions, Rick, I'll have you, you want to talk at the end? Okay, yeah. So my client will make any comments maybe on rebuttal after the public's had an opportunity to speak. Thank you.
Did you want anybody to address us now or?
If you want, or I mean, if you have some questions of me, I'll be more than happy to answer some questions, or
After.
that's fine. Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense. I'll get out of the way.
Presentation.
Sure. So I just want to note that the receipts of mailing were submitted tonight, the originals. I know you have the original special permit in your packet, 321, as well as the renewal that was in 2019. The allowed uses under 321 were excavation, grading, processing, stockpiling, sale of earth materials mined, excavated from and or imported to the property, excavation, grading, processing, stockpiling, and or sale of naturally occurring earth material from the property, location and use of necessary equipment, temporary on-property fueling of vehicles and equipment, and agriculture. So those are the things that were allowed under 321, with a number of conditions. You can see how lengthy number 321 is. The method to renew these permits is also spelled out in number 321. Again, you can renew it for 2 years. Last time you chose to renew it for 3 years. A couple of the modifications that we would suggest if you choose to renew it are similar to what Attorney Londrigan had said. I think that the holidays should specifically be spelled out in the permit so that everyone knows exactly which holidays there can't be any work. We're also suggesting that the Yetter Road entrance be posted, that it's farm equipment only, so that the old client will see the sign and hopefully turn around and want to. You have anything, Tom?
No, I don't have anything to add. I'm just here to answer any questions that the commission may have.
Okay. Yep, the pile height. So in 2019, you did allow one of the piles to be higher. And that is also a modification that is requested for an additional pile here. The applicant suggested that it does provide additional buffering to residences that are on Yetter Road. What's the maximum length we could extend the permit for? 321 says 2 years. I don't know if there's a maximum length. You did 3 last time. That's correct. We did 4 or 5. I don't know off the top of my head. I don't know. 321 says 2 years.
I do have one thing to add as far as the signage goes. So in addition to a sign posted along Yetter Road for farm access only, I would also recommend one inside of the quarry. There's a possibility, when I was there once on inspection, that trucks get turned around and get lost and see that access. So if there's a sign posted inside, that can prevent trucks accessing onto Yetter Road.
Did you want to make any presentation on the complaint log? Or wait until I'm here?
I just summarized the email complaints I've had throughout time, and I exported my email to go for this particular special use permit, so I can again address any questions you may have.
Does anyone in the public wish to address this tonight?
Sorry, say that again.
Does anyone in the public wish to address?
Yeah, I
commission tonight?
I don't have anything. Yeah, my name's
Ed McCousher. 48 West Ellicott Road, Groton, Connecticut. I'm an attorney. I'm representing David and Tammy Wakis, who reside at 388 Yetta Road, which is adjacent to the property that's the subject of this special permit tonight. And I listened to the presentation, and I've familiarized myself with the history of the property, and there's been a long history of litigation between the town, the zoning commission, the ZBA. And it began as it was stated in 2007, when the CEO at that time found that there were pre-existing non-conforming uses for activity and removal of material on the site. But he found that there were uses that were not permitted for importation of material, for crushing and that sort of thing, which was accurately described. But that's been, sort of the nub or the issue throughout all this litigation, was what exactly is going to be allowed on this property. And from my examination of the special permit and the settlement agreement, you have a copy of the settlement agreement. The special permit, which the original one was in 2012, it mentions more than once that the one major change was that the provisions of paragraph 5C of the settlement agreement shall not apply to this special permit 321, except for the last sentence of 5C. And if you look at that paragraph 5C, which I believe you have a copy of, the only provision that applies from that paragraph, which I believe is entitled non-permitted uses, or deals with non-permitted uses, is imported materials shall consist of fill only and may not contain hazardous waste or construction debris. I think the record shows that other material has been imported to this property, and looking at the submission by, the Whittles, there's I think it's page 14 of their submittal. It says types of material imported pursuant to the terms and conditions of the special use permit. Any imported materials may not include hazardous waste or construction debris. What they failed to say is that in accordance with the special permit, fill only can be imported. So they glossed over that and skipped it because that is a limitation of what appears to be a lot of imported material, concrete, asphalt, and other materials coming on the property. And it even admits to this. It says, the only material imported has been rock, bituminous material, concrete, and asphalt that has been brought in by the town of Groton. That is contrary to the terms of the special permit, and it's been allowed to go on for quite a period of time. And I would just direct, the commission's attention to your own zoning regulations, and in the definitions, there's a definition of filling, extraction of earth products, the removal, extraction, excavation, fill, or grading for any purpose of soil, sand, shell, gravel, or rock, clay, or any similar material by whatever process. And you'll see that those are called earth materials or earth products. And under 5.1-2E, filling and removing earth products, which is the section that authorizes a special permit, under certain conditions. It says the filling with or removal of earth products, such as but not limited to earth, loam, topsoil, sand, gravel, clay, stone, or minerals, is permitted subject to the standards and conditions. So throughout this section of the zoning regulations, it continuously refers to earth products. And again, it's defining them as what you would see if you dug the ground up. Loam, topsoil, sand, gravel, clay, not concrete, not asphalt. And if I won't, mention all the mentions of earth products. There's no mention of any other material that a special permit can be issued for this type of operation under your zoning regulations. And also in the history of this, matter that the town has been involved in, there was a decision by Judge Cole Chu in 2015, and it's a rather exhaustive analysis of the issues that have been litigated by both the town and the Whittle family. And the opinion that Judge Chu wrote makes it clear that the only permitted use is removal of sand and gravel on this property. And even in the, well, I'll skip that. Yeah, well, I won't go through the whole opinion. I'm going to submit a copy to you, but if you examine it, it makes it clear that the application and the application that was submitted, which was the subject of this case, sought to be able to process asphalt and concrete and other materials. And the court found that even under the zoning regulations at the time, the only filling and removal of product was earth products, which again were, as I described earlier. At one point, a Groton manager of planning services, Matthew Davis, this is quoting the opinion, told the defendant commission, which is your predecessor, the zoning commission, the importation of earth products for processing, storage, and sale is prohibited at the property. So even bringing in earth products for storage, sale, processing is not permitted at the property and in the zoning district in which the property is located. It is not contemplated in the town's comprehensive plan. So the dispute about what is permitted on this property has pervaded all the actions, of this commission and all the legal challenges to it. But the ultimate resolution of it is that only fill can be imported to the property. And I like just a couple of reasons for that. In the citation of what the court cited the settlement agreement, and it talked about when this particular use may be terminated and disturbed areas on the property shall be restored and maintained. Fill would be brought to the property to fill in the excavations. And again, in section 5 of that settlement agreement, it talks about the ultimate closure of the site. So the fill is not, some grand, large category of material. Even under the zoning regulations, it's earth products as described. I'd also like to just cite, where the settlement agreement talks about no construction material and no hazardous waste. The state of Connecticut, the DEP, has a page which describes what construction and demolition waste is. And it says construction and demolition waste is generated from construction, renovation, repair, and demolition of houses, large building structures, roads, bridges, piers, and dams. It can be made up of masonry, plaster, metal, and asphalt. It is notable because it contains hazardous materials. So even like, apparently there's been, I actually would like to talk to the, I have the Public Works, head here. I'd like to see if he's aware of any concrete or other material that's been brought to this property, because these are, again, not fill. So if I may, is the, Public Works, oh, hi. Can I, do you want him to come up so I can ask him a few questions? Would that be appropriate?
Yes, it's not normal, but.
Witness stand over here.
Yeah. Unless you want to go.
Yes. You received a subpoena from me, a day or two ago, which was seeking certain records.
Yes.
Okay, and you produced certain records to me that were provided to me through the town attorney. Were you aware of that?
I provided one piece of paper, yes.
I have a monthly invoice dated 11/4/2021. And it's from Willow Spring Farm. And it's a bill to the Groton Public Works. And the item is as it's listed there, is disposal of concrete. Quantity 3. There was a price of 150 each. Can you tell me what that was? What happened with that?
This isn't a court case. Can we leave it to technical items only?
Well, I'm just trying to, demonstrate to you that concrete is being imported to this property. If you have any doubt of that.
It's 3 truckloads of catch basin tops and stored for years and years, disposed of at the site.
Okay, and when you say you dispose of it, what did you do? Just leave it there?
I assume so.
Okay, so there was concrete imported to the property through the Public Works Department.
Yes.
Has the Public Works Department also had asphalt delivered to the Whittle facility?
Occasionally we have small truckloads of asphalt for working on the road job, yes.
You ever have asphalt or concrete processed by the Whittle facility for?
Well, that's not relevant. Can you just say if we delivered concrete or asphalt, that's enough.
Well, the special permit doesn't actually, the only thing that can be processed there is, as I see it, is earth product. And so again, that's why I'm.
Interesting.
I have no other questions of this gentleman. I appreciate you coming by. So I am interested in, what some of the invoices that are in the submission by the applicant, what they indicate, and I'd like to ask questions about it because they seem to indicate that there's been asphalt processed and concrete and other products processed. Would that be appropriate?
You stated that. That's okay. You're giving us information.
So you'll just take my word for it?
If we don't, then we'll ask for more information than actual from other people.
All right. Well, my fundamental point is that under the special permit, as it references the settlement agreement, the only material that can be imported on the property is fill. And so any other property what I would suggest is that you make it very clear, if you decide to renew this permit, that those materials cannot be imported to the property,
That's an
processed or otherwise.
Yeah, that would be an enforcement.
Well, it is also, it could be a condition of the special permit. And the special permit has a condition that only fill can be imported to the property. But who's enforcing it?
That's not our concern.
Okay, well, would you admit that you're not concerned about whether there's,
Oh, it would be our concern if we wanted to change the special permit.
right, so whether applicant is complying with the terms of the special permit, doesn't concern you.
Well, I think concerns the town, but doesn't concern whether we approve or not necessarily. Something
Well,
to consider.
I would just submit that if the applicant is violating the terms of the special permit, you could deny it.
Yes. That's
All right, well, I guess that's as interested as you're gonna be.
Does anyone else in the public wish to address this? Yes. Please state your name and address.
David Wakus, 388 Yetta Road, Mystic, Connecticut. So I've lived adjacent to that property since 1977. And just a few notes here, I might be a little enforcement. You just brought up enforcement. Who enforces the terms of this special permit? I've been told by Mr. Zanarini that he has no jurisdiction over enforcement of the permit. It's strictly up to the Planning and Zoning Commission. I got an email from him stating that enforcement's not his deal.
I don't know if that's correct.
I was told, and I don't have that email, but maybe we can get through to the town records. And the way it started, this conversation was, this is how it is. My job is to observe and provide the commission with the data.
That's what I said. I would observe based on his complaints, do the reporting, make sure it's documented so you can review it at the next special permit.
And the complaints are basically noise. The ones on your list are basically noise.
Right.
Who does the enforcement? Who's enforcement? The judge, when my wife stood up in court, she agreed we didn't oppose the permit. The judge questioned her and he said, it's the town's responsibility to enforce this.
That's correct.
Who's doing it? Mr. Zanarini is the town zoning enforcement. He says it's not his job. Whose job is it?
Well, that's something we.
For the enforcement actions that were listed, I would contact the Whittle Farm, I would get a response, and I would report on that. And every response I got, I was satisfied with. The only one that I was not satisfied with was the holidays. There was a confusion on whether they were working on certain holidays or not.
How about, I provided you with photos of Mr. Whittle's son's trucks exiting the Yetta Road thing. I provided you with documentation last week, photos of other people coming by, coming out. You know, and I'm hearing him, this is only 2 years, it's been constant truck traffic on Yetta Road. Let me back up.
If I can respond, you put one photo that showed the top 1/8 of the truck possibly entering Yetta Road. And I got a response from the Whittle Farm saying it was someone that was lost and looking for a neighborhood property in the neighborhood. So I got a response. I was satisfied. Look into that
What
one.
about pictures of Amcon trucking? I've showed you leaving the pit, clearly leaving the pit, videos of it. Has somebody like to go up a Yetta Road and look at the damage to Yetta Road, all the grooving and the damage to the road? Where's all that coming from? You know, maybe somebody could go up and look at that. Blasting, you know, my house has new cracks in the foundation. Where'd those come from? Never had cracks till they started blasting there. A lot of the complaints are me, you know, but the noise. We made a deal in court. Mr. Whittle said he would agree the conditions of the permit. We did not oppose that. But every day, tonight, 6:10, I was out with the dog. There's backup beepers. Is your fireman back there tonight at 6:10? Backup beepers and tailgates banging tonight? You know, it starts every day. Saturdays, no operations, nothing but sales. You know, I provided pictures of that screen right from my own property. Why is the WCMP dump truck, a garbage truck? What kind of fill are they bringing into the place? You know, it's not like I'm sitting out and watching these guys. No, I stand in my kitchen window and just observe all this going by. You know?
Or you don't see them going on to the property.
Huh?
You just see them go by.
No, I see them in the property. I look right out my window. I watch the dump trucks, garbage trucks pull in. I watch all the stuff. I listen to it. I hear it. I'm not deaf.
Have you been submitting those to the town?
Yes, I have.
Garbage trucks?
No, I don't have to go into the garbage truck. Maybe I got to get a better drone to park it up there all day.
Okay.
What, I have better things to do. I have a life. I'm not gonna just sit and, watch his trucks. When am I gonna sit up there? Oh, 2 trucks went in today, from Yenner Road. Oh, when I see him go by my house constantly.
Okay, just make your statements.
All right, so the noise complaint, I just don't know how. This is now a US government MSHA registered mine? How did this happen in a farm in an RU40 neighborhood?
What does that have to do with the permit?
How did it mine? It says no other uses. This permit shall not in any way be construed to allow any other use of the property. How did government approved mining start there? Where did that come in?
That's what you don't understand what you're talking about.
Well, look at the sign. It's mine. It's a
Just for safety. It's for safety. I need the same as excavation. Yeah, it's just for safety.
This Tony Henry, if I could respond, I believe even when Attorney Longton was speaking, when he was speaking of OSHA, OHSA, I believe it's the Mining and Hazardous Safety Administration. And there just happens to be the organization
The organization.
that federally that recognizes not just mining, it might pits, quarries, that kind of thing. It's the organization that monitors and administers the enforcement.
So it was an OSHA vehicle.
MHSA, not OSHA.
But I mean, the same. The government.
Similar organization of occupational, but for mining.
Has nothing to do with the business. It's monitored.
It's the quarry operation, as I'm sure it falls under the jurisdiction that they.
But my most complaints are the hours of operation and the dust. I understand Mr. Whittle has a right to run his business, and I don't care what goes on back there. I've not set foot on that property in years and years and years. But when the quality of my life deteriorates for his financial gain, the dust is incredible. Look at these new piles, these 180 something foot piles. Where does the dust go? It just blows through my house constantly. The prevailing winds out of the southwest, it just blows right through my property constantly. And then the noise, who enforces the noise? I mean, the hours of operation. The rock crusher starts to shut down at 5 o'clock every day, 7 to 5. Yeah, but the pit's 7 to 5. Shouldn't the pit start at 7 o'clock? And shouldn't the crusher be done at 5 o'clock?
Yes.
What is it? No, it
So
isn't.
before this gets out of hand, if you please, we'll let Mr. Wakes speak and then we can respond individually.
But my most complaints are the hours of operation with no enforcement and the dust issues, and nothing's done on the dust. And that's about it.
Anyone else wish to address this? Yes.
Yeah, it's
If you want
177.
to stand up.
Okay.
You have to record this. Just say your name and address for the record.
Dan Gaddis, 177 Yetta Road. Seems like every couple of years we come here, it's the same complaint about the same thing. Just one person is unhappy. We have to make a phone call to call them every day, peeking out the windows, taking pictures, whatever they're doing. They comply with everything you can think about. Whittle's been nothing but great. We don't get any trucks up and down the road anymore. They come from 184. The guy's got in their little pickup truck or something, a little snake bite. They turn around and they go up, they're gonna complain about that. No matter what you do, they're not gonna change it. They've had many opportunities to go and try to get along, but apparently they don't. But the issue is that if you're not happy there, move. I'm pretty sure Whittles would buy your property from you. You put the berms up, you put this up, you make this. They bring nothing but the best to the town. They bring the best, the gravel, they go down and get your stuff. You don't have to go up to Norwich, you don't have to go here, you bring it. You saved a ton of money. And to have complaints is something that, that's the only one in the whole street is complaining about. And I hope you grant them to permit, but they are great to the community and that you're not gonna make it out of summer vegetables. Thank you.
Does anyone else wish to address this?
Just ask one thing, what I was attempting to do was to create a record. These decisions are appealable. So I just wanted the record to reflect that you did not permit me to ask questions of witnesses.
We're not interviewing.
I understand, I'm just,
Address us and make statements.
okay, I
You
just
can ask questions.
want the record to reflect that you did not wish me to ask questions
This
of
is in
witnesses.
the court.
That's all I wanted to establish. Thank you.
Just, you know, if I can interrupt, the process for planning and zoning commission, you can ask your questions to the planning and zoning commission. And the planning and zoning commission will then ask those questions of the people that are relevant to answer those.
The audience, the public is not going to ask questions to another person.
Well, no, the applicant
They can
should
ask
be able to,
the person, so.
the applicant should be able to answer questions.
The applicant can ask any questions that were raised by the public. The applicant should be responding. If there is to respond. Yes. But it's not a direct, you can't, it's not a direct interview of the public to another member.
It's an
of the
administrative
public.
hearing, you know, you can ask questions of witnesses, you can swear them in.
We can ask.
Oh, I see.
Good evening. My name's Chris Whipple. I live at 39 Yetter Road. Kind of here for twofold because I obviously do live in the area. I'm not directly adjacent to the property in question, but I am a resident on the road. With that also being said, I'm a small business operator, solo landscape person that gets a lot of my material from the Whittles as well. And I will say this, that credibility and reputation in any type of business is important. And I'm going to give you a small story here that happened. I had a delivery. Rick Whittle delivered a bunch of stone for me at a job that I was doing. I accidentally overpaid the driver. Not sure whether I gave him additional money, the bills stuck together, whatever it was, but I overpaid by about $80. Within the hour, Rick was back to me at the job site and handed me money. I didn't realize I overpaid him, but credibility and reputation go a long way in the business. With that also being said about hours of operation, within the last year or so, I was hauling in some debris and it was close to 5 and I was actually turned away. They were closing up for the day. It was probably 5 or a little after 5, hoping to get the last load in for the day. So they are hearing, at least from my standard, from not only a resident, but a small business owner, hauling in and hauling out, that the hours of operation are adhered to, at least from what I can tell. So thank you.
Anyone else wish to address this? No.
I'd like to come up. So my name is Janelle Haggerty. Chris is my husband. We live on Yetter Road. I'm a teacher. We have 3 kids at our house. I walk Yetter Road with my dog Willow. Her name is Willow Spring, actually. I don't know if I told you that. I don't know Rick and I don't know Phil really well, but I see them often. And Chris, my husband, talks about them all the time. I know, and I sound like you're very frustrated about the noise. We don't live directly across from the pit. So I can understand your frustration because I feel that way about some dogs on my road. However, with that said, the farm stand is somewhere I've been going my entire life with my kids, picking apples, picking pumpkins, and it benefits our community. If they don't have access to make supplemental money, that farm won't be there anymore. And I feel like we might be in a position where instead of a gravel pit, we might be looking at a condominium or a townhouses. Yep, I hear. Yeah, but there's always gonna be an
You should be
issue.
addressing.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. But the positive impact that this family has on my community is way outweighs the issue that I feel like is down the road. I enjoy my street. I enjoy my neighbors very much. I feel like this business is respectful of our neighborhood. The main issue I have is the people that drive too fast on my road. That's a big issue for me, and I've addressed it with people. But in terms of Whittle's Farm, I would hope that you would support your business going forward.
Anyone else wish to address this?
Oh, it's good. Okay. Hi. I am Frederick Robert Whittle II. I am the fourth generation on the farm. My son is here. He is the fifth. Our main guy is here. He's just here for support, but I am going to take about 10 to 15 minutes. 10. Usually my son and my lawyer dread having to come up here, but this will be educational for you. You're all going to learn a few things. Let's see where we're going to start. You all will be able to follow me along as we do this. Do you understand? Right. So, before I took that, I was supposed to bring this out. So, what we sell at our farm, mini pumpkins, $1 a piece. Cucumber, $1.50. Here, fresh picked corn. Some people drive 90 minutes for it. $1. So, if you read this, this is all the steps to bring this to that table. You got buy the seed, plant the seed, weed the plant, fertilize the plant, okay? That's become a whole nother problem. Because of the war in Ukraine and the embargoes and sanctions against Russia, fertilizer has doubled. I now pay $1,000 a ton for fertilizer. My uncle swears when he was a kid, who still works on the farm, was at dialysis 3 times a week. He's 84 years old. After dialysis, you're supposed to go home and go to bed. He comes to work, picks beans, picks corn, loads dump trucks, wherever needs to be done. So anyway, here's the fertilizer problem. So then, after you go through all your fertilizing, the crops need to be sprayed. Now, this is where part of the noise comes from. The crops get sprayed by myself, and by Richard Weatherall III over here. And what happens is, we have to start at 3:30 in the morning. You say, that's insane. Yeah, it is insane. And the reason being is the honeybee mandate. The whole world revolves around bees. Wheat, squash, pumpkins, whatever it is. So if you spray during the day, bees go to bed like we all like to. If you spray once it's past sunup or before sundown, the bees are out. So what they do is they bring the chemical back to the hive. All the bees die, or depending which chemical, and we spray restricted use pesticides. It took me probably a year to go through 8 textbooks, 1,000 question test, and 90% passing grade to get my license. Well, long story short, if the bees bring the pesticides back to the hive and survive, we now get chemical honey, pesticide, chemical honey. So nobody wants to have chemicals in their honey, right? So it's very important to spray after dark, before. So we tend to start at 3:30 in the morning. So what happens is my mother, who's 82 years old, says, honey, why don't you preload the sprayer? Save yourself 45 minutes. Guess what? You can't preload the sprayer. The Department of Agriculture doesn't want restricted use pesticides, 400 gallons at a time left in the sprayer. God forbid you go home to have a snack. Valve blows, hose blows. Now you got 500 gallons of restricted use pesticide flowing into where? Probably the water pond we use for irrigation. So then she says, why don't you just fill it with water and add the chemical later? Save more time. Can't do it. Department of Agriculture wants you to add the chemical. There's agitators in the bottom that mix the chemical. Some of the chemicals are dry powder, some come in a pouch. So if you just try to throw them on top of the water, they don't always mix correctly. Part of the crop gets 30% of the chemical it needs, the other part gets oversprayed. You want overspray on your yellow squash? Absolutely not. So it's very important this is all gets done in a timely manner. Where are we on our sheet? Right. Well, here, let's give you this. So, again, all this gets sold for $1, trying to support 3 generations that still work there. Oh, sorry. All this gets done, 3 generations have to get supported there. Countless employees, high school kids that do the harvest, women that sell the stuff in the store. And remember, it's only 16 weeks out of the year. Again, trying to sell everything for $1. So now I'm gonna hand you out my weekly work schedule. And this isn't a whole feel bad for Rick. This is just to educate you what we have to go through. As you can see, I work 96 hours a week, as does my son, as does my main guy, so we can sell things for $1. Okay, now I'm still not done.
You're wrapping up, right?
We are now, as you know, we had the driest summer on record. So this year we had to do endless irrigation. Normally you do it for a week, 8, 9 days. It rains, you pack it all up, put it away. We did it for 33 straight days, 500 gallons a minute, a total of 9 million gallons over 33 days. And I can't even tell you the amount of work. And it's 95 degrees out. The weatherman says, oh, everybody should stay inside. The fields retain the heat, kind of like when you're looking down the highway and you see the heat rising, like 112, 115 degrees. And we're dragging this pipe. But again, photos to follow. This actually has 3 pieces, so I'll explain it after I get them around. So as you'll see, this actually does an 1.5 acres at a time, puts on about 1 inch of water per hour. If you look at the second photo, you will see all the pipes. We have thousands and thousands of feet of this that have to be connected. Again, 93-degree heat all day long, something we wouldn't have to do if it just rained. And if you look in the third picture, gives you an example of pipe that pretty much starts at the farm and goes all the way down to 95. Again, thousands of feet of pipe that we have to lay out, but it's what we do. It's in our genes. It's in, thank God my son has the same work ethic. It's what we do. I mean, most people are on their boat on Sunday, and if someone walks up and says, oh, that corn was delicious, it just makes my whole day. Okay. Then after all of that, providing the plant grows correctly, you gotta harvest it, and then you gotta bring it to the store, package it, and sell it. All steps, all cost money. Again, selling everything for $1. I don't even know with the way the prices went up if I have another handout. I mean, I have to wait for bookkeepers and accountants if that part of the farm is even profitable. But again, the importance of the sand and stone sales is what keeps this. Jeff calls it 300. It's actually about 380 acres in the middle of Mystic. And for 5 generations, it's never been pieces of it sold off. As he also told you, we gave 60-some acres to a conservation easement. And part of that was along 95 where the Flanders Road Business Park is. So that was commercial property where warehouses could have been built, either myself or that guy could have annexed it with road frontage on my side. But it's in conservation easement. So gotta keep selling vegetables. I gotta keep selling sand. This little handout is to show you what happened this year between the war in Ukraine, supply chain disruptions, and inflationary pressures. as you can see on top of everything else. The seed prices are up 30%, chemical prices are up 40% because most chemicals come from China. Fuel's up 75%, I don't even have to tell you about that. That's what all our tractors use, that's what everything uses, and the fertilizer's up 100%. So we have this whole battle to fight, and again, at the end of the day, everything's pretty much sold for $1 each. Now, you're done. No, not yet. So, there's been, discussion before, about the asphalt and concrete. I thought this whole world, the whole thing was about going green. I thought everything was about recycle, going green. I just want to show you this handout here. Oh, outdid myself. Which is record high recycle. Oh. Tells you that the use of asphalt being recycled has reached record high. I want to show you what town's concrete or my neighbor's sidewalk, what happens to it after it gets crushed and put back down. As Mary Mushkauser says, fill material. And this particular driveway was put between 18 and 24 inches thick. Again, this is about recycling, and that's what happens to the product. It becomes a very valuable product, and it's actually one of our biggest sellers because it's used for road base, driveway base. They built a giant beer hops-like facility at the airport that was used inside because of the packs, like 98, 99% compaction. So anyway, you can look those over.
I think we're done. Yeah, we're good.
We're good. Well, oh, good. No, I haven't got my 10 minutes yet. So again, now we're just going to talk about the noise. So what happens is once in a while when we spray, we get stuck. So when we get stuck, because we have front-end loaders at our gravel facility, we use those to pull the tractor out through the mud because we don't, with climate change, we don't get regular rainstorms anymore. We get 3 inches, we get 4. This year wasn't so bad, but just a couple of weeks ago, we had 3 1/4 inches after literally nothing all summer. And this is a photo from last time, but we still have to do the same thing. Again, these are noises you hear before dawn, before dusk, because of the agricultural honeybee mandate. We can't have honeybees eating chemicals. So when the tractor's stuck, we get a 4-wheel drive front end loader to pull it through the row. And again, the loader does have a backup alarm. Again, it's all an agricultural practice. And one more thing, sometimes on Saturdays, when we load customers or do our own deliveries, if the front end loader is up at the farm getting serviced, we will use our track machine to load the dump trucks. Mr. Waker says he hears, why am I hearing track noises? No mining on Saturdays. We're not mining, we're loading trucks with that machine so we can do maintenance on the front end machine. you can clearly see it's loading out of a stockpile, not mining. And that's being done while maintenance is being done on one of the actual loaders. Just again, as far as the noise goes. Our facility is also very important when there's a water line break, anywhere there's public water supply. They send a crew, to come down and fix it, where they come and take 6 to 7 yards of stone and bring whatever muck was from the trench and dump. This all gets done at night, but there's never a complaint because bizarrely enough, nobody ever hears it. This is downtown Mystic, 3,000 people without water. You can see on the time stamp, I got there late, but this was 5:50 in the morning. And if you carefully look in the trench, there again is the recycled material as the whole planet tries to go green. I want to show you something else. Again, as farmers, we're trusted by the Department of Agriculture to literally be stewards of the environment. Nobody is over our shoulder at 3:30 in the morning when we're loading chemicals into sprayers to make sure we use the correct amount. Sometimes it's so many quarts per acre. Sometimes it's so much per 100 gallons. Well, again, we're stewards of the environment and we have a big responsibility on our shoulders and we take it very seriously. This, down at our facility, we have beavers. Now, it'd be very easy to trap them, dispose of them. Well, we try to live with them, but once in a while we have piping that goes to our irrigation pond. They try to clog it up and I'll show you the result of that, which sometimes at 7 o'clock at night, we have to unclog the pipe, which again could be another noise, but it's agriculture related because it's water going to our irrigation pond. We're almost done.
Just gonna say. Wrap it up.
I know, we're close.
No.
So you can see from the photo where the beavers are, they eventually will clog that solid and I'll show you the result of that. Rather than, shoot the beaver or whatever, we try to coexist with them, again, being stewards of the land. And I'll show you what happens when they finish plugging the pipe up.
Take it with.
Yeah. That's it. This is amazing. They literally flood the entire facility. So anyway, that's it. I get a little carried away because I feel like my family's integrity sometimes being attacked. We've been doing this for 120 years. We're very proud of what we do. And as Ms. Sullivan stated, there's a recession coming. There's all these expenses I was telling you about. If it wouldn't hurt my feelings if you went again 3, 4, 5 years, because Mr. Landrigan, he's a great guy. Over the course of 15 years, he's actually become a personal friend. However, with my working hours, we don't see each other much, but he does cost money as well as the surveying, and every step of this costs money. So again, if you go 3, 4, 5 years, it wouldn't hurt my feelings. And then one last thing we're going to talk about is this whole holiday thing. When we were working with the contractors that were rebuilding the schools for the town, Columbus Day, Veterans Day, that was like their biggest day to get things done. No kids in school, nobody around. 4th of July, I get Labor Day, I get New Year's, Christmas, all those, but Columbus Day, I mean, I turned on CNN last year and they were ripping statues down all over the country. How that's still a holiday, I have no idea. Also, I have the Ledgewood High School calendar. They go to school on Veterans Day. So how, so I just think some thought needs to go into the actual holidays. I'm sure after seeing my hours, you're probably thinking the kid needs a day off, but we do Customers come, a lot of residential customers. And one last thing with that Yetta Road, I have no problem putting a sign there. But what few people come, what's gonna happen is they're gonna say, oh, I gotta go to 184, and the shortest way is by my neighbor's house. And he sees the truck go by, phones will call. And here's the other problem, every time he calls, staff will call me, will call him. I resolve the problem, he calls them back. 3 days later, I have a bill in the mail. So I try to limit those complaints as much as possible. But with that being said, I think, I'm through. Thank you. Wait, one more. No, one more. This goes back when we tried our best to be friendly with the neighbors. I'm gonna pass this out. I'm gonna read it to you, 2 sentences, and I'm done, I promise. Okay, this is when we had a water leak, 8, 9 o'clock at night. You can see who it's to. Probably my spelling wasn't perfect. It's out on my phone. It says Wakey's wife, which would be David's wife. It says, good evening. There's a water main break in Stonington Borough. Probably a load in, maybe 2. If you hear a little bit of noise. Okay, a lot of this is about noise. Hey, sorry, just seeing this now. No problem. Running central air, hate the dampness, and didn't hear anything. I quote, didn't hear anything, all good, smiley face. And then, it goes back to, Heckles and McCoy or whatever, and everyone's mad at each other, but we do try. All right, I'm done. Thank you for your time.
Anyone else wish to address this tonight? No one wants to follow the act.
Yeah, I'll back on that one, but
Yes.
I'd just like to make a recommendation. The permit said 2 years on the permit. Let's go back to the 2 years, like it was originally in the beginning. Let's go for 2 years on the permit. That's what the permit stated. Let's go for 2 years. And no, yeah, follow that up.
I've got a recommendation. Instead of come back, you have to hire your lawyer and go through the same thing over and over again. Once you just move, they'll set you up a place, you go somewhere else, and you bother somebody else instead of.
We're now heavily addressing others.
Gotta be kidding here. Come
Oh,
on. Discussion.
without really raising any questions I have, I'll start with you.
A whole lot though, I throw out there the difference between what is fill, what is filling and removing earth products. So my mind is used as construction fill, and clean fill. It can be concrete, it's fill. The asphalt is fill. It's still legitimate, whether you grind them up or what you do with them, different story perhaps, but processing of fill, not just filling and removing earth products. That's what it says here. That's what they're dealing with here. That's earth products. So it's not just gravel. It can be used as fill, which is concrete. Fill product is a great thing to use. Certainly, I didn't think about the asphalt. I can see not having an asphalt plant in the back there, but it doesn't sound like that's existing. So the kind of use of it, it's not used as a finished material. It's used as fill underneath things. I'm not sure about unless somebody else has a definition of fill different from that. I'm kind of inclined to say it's still fill. That's what they're allowed to stockpile and process. The dust control, I'll just kind of throw that out to whoever wants that. Was it unusually dusty this year?
You know what's funny? My father died 6.5 years ago. I was always on the farm. Now my son is pretty much around the fruits and vegetables. I am down in the sand pit. In all honesty, the wind never blows at his house. It always blows towards the highway. But I also have, if you have another 15 seconds, a little flyer to show you dust control.
No, I don't think I need it.
Okay, no, dust control.
You got a water truck. That some of it has to do with just watering,
We water with our front buckets and our machines,
And I think it's your
thousands of
It's
gallons.
not your farms that are the problem. We're talking about the land stuff, the filth and your piles and stuff. which That's the part that's different than a farm. The farm is probably stays pretty good. So in terms of your piles of dirt and sand,
Oh, they don't,
you also keep those down.
they don't make dust. They don't, you're welcome to come
Well,
down.
it sounds like your neighbor thinks they do.
I understand that. He thinks of lots of things, yes.
But this seems like an easy one. So you already got the water, you already got the truck, so overtake.
But the actual dirt bikes and four-wheelers driving around the fields, no, you can't even see when they make a lap. The actual dust from our machines and the piles is
I don't think that's.
almost nothing.
That we can't help because if it's the farming action, it's a farm.
Well, the fields, as you know, it didn't rain for 3 months. They were very dusty.
Right. And that I'm not as concerned about. Concern was about stockpiling. And that not having the dust control, which seems to be easily under your control. If in fact, that could be part of the program.
Yeah, if those piles had been of dust, we would water them down, but they don't, so.
I can assume that they do. But if it's, you wouldn't notice it because they're well in, so it would just be an assumption on a construction site. Construction sites around demolition, they're always watering.
That's because there's always active. What makes the dust is all the traffic. The piles don't have traffic right now. Once they rain, they turn into like a cake, and then the sun bakes them and the dust element is gone.
The only thing that makes dust is trucks driving on the road, and my 84-year-old grandfather waters the roads constantly. That's all he does. He's always in everyone's way.
So it's for the record, you need to state your name and address if you want to speak.
Phil Whittle.
My 84-year-old grandfather, or I'm sorry, great uncle, all he does is actually just drive around that gravel pit and water down the roads all day. And everyone else that works down there actually complains about it because he just is constantly making sure that there's no dust. And the only thing that makes dust is trucks driving on the roads and loaders driving on the roads. And all he does is water that whole place. He actually makes mud puddles. So he does a very good job of keeping down the dust.
Your name and address too.
Phil Whittle, 86 Oslo Street, Mystic, Connecticut.
Any other questions?
I'm very familiar and all the permit and all the surrounding discussions over the years. And I think I agree with Hal. I don't see any problem with what they're doing on the reported materials at all. I think that's what was contemplated. But you know, certainly, if I understand the 50% part and all that, so. No, I think that's fine. I appreciate the presentation. I think it's helpful to understand what goes on in a farming operation for those of us who only do home gardening.
Quick one for either one of you. What percentage of the imported material is considered either concrete or asphalt?
Imported as from, you mean with other types of material?
Yeah, I mean,
Of everything
there
imported.
appears to be a discrepancy in between what fill is
Well-
and construction debris, and so.
Well, let's say you decide to widen your driveway. So the guy comes, he digs up the topsoil, the sod, etc. That comes to us. We rescreen it.
So it's a large percentage of your operation.
So, yep, so that, no, that's part of it.
Okay.
So now you tell your guy, I don't want my driveway to crack. So after you remove the topsoil, I want you to go down another 6 inches. So now he removes the hard pan. So when we take that, and that goes in another area. We're very good about separating everything.
Yeah.
So then he brings back the recycled, reclaimed, crushed concrete asphalt mix. And to make that stuff work well, if it's purely asphalt, the roller pushes it. It actually rolls, doesn't do a good job. You need like a 50-50 mix of concrete and asphalt to get that 98% compaction. So he comes now and puts that down, and then it gets paved. So when EB was doing for this new submarine class, Manafort was bringing us rocks, ledge, whatever got down there. So when certain things get done, if your old driveway was ripped up, that would come. If Like the attorney Landry said a couple years ago, the senior center had a lot of work. We received that asphalt from the town. As far as percentage basis goes, it's probably equal between, when someone puts in a new sidewalk, digs up their driveway, the amount of rock. Let's say your septic system fails. You hire a New London County or more. They come, they dig up your whole yard because the new systems are almost the size of this room. Special sand that comes from the reservoir. Sometimes the stone comes from us. Long story short, now there's 15 carry-on luggage-sized rocks in your yard. And you tell the septic guy, what are you doing with those? Well, I don't want them here. Oh, well, gee, the only place I can bring them is to Whittles. So now those rocks come to us. Eventually they get crushed.
Understood.
So you want the percentages. So I'm just saying, so roughly it's probably 25% fill, 25% organic, which would be your topsoil material, 25% concrete, 25% asphalt. I would say on a percentage basis, 25, 25, 25, 25.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Is the critical times of operation 7 a.m., is that a hard thing for your rock processing?
The actual rock processing is only 50 days a year,
Yeah.
and he is 8 to 5. Only thing at 7 o'clock is us loading trucks,
Loading.
and they do come at 7. That's when construction people start work. When these schools were being built,
Yep.
they were lined up out there waiting for us to put the chains down. And
But
again,
no
it's
actual crushing.
no crushing, no sir. That's not until 8, and it's only 50 days a year.
Add one more thing, please.
Just
Right
section.
now, right now, we're going around. As soon as we're through getting our issues answered. I had a question, you, Tom, on this matrix. Could you go down it and explain what the resolutions were, what these items were in the matrix you gave us? Oh, you don't? Well, I have it in my package.
For each of these,
Are they all the same?
they are generally all of the same. With the truck noise, I would, as Mr. Widow had pointed out, I would contact the company, contact Rick, if you want to get back to me. Generally, it was with a farming activity, or it was maybe it was 10 minutes early or 5 minutes early. There was the one lasting concern from November of 12th, and that was the various complaints. So there was people around just contacting saying, is there a permit issued? Is this supposed to be happening? And it was. He sent me the MHSA permit that was granted to do the blasting at that time.
Well, all these complaints.
They were, I would
They were,
get a response that I thought was sufficient. It was farming and it was farming, so there was
no, I
no.
don't disagree.
I had gone out on various occasions on Saturday mornings. I had gone out unannounced on Juneteenth to see if anything was going to happen. I was there on Juneteenth. I was in the inside of the quarry. Right around 8 after 8, they were only doing farming. So surprise inspections that I did from time to time. Came up on the end.
I just had one other question. I think there was an issue on identifying holidays. Where there's some holidays that you felt should not be on the list.
Yes, sir.
of holidays following. You don't have to-
Well, no, I have, documentation like this year on Veterans Day. Ledyard High School is going to school. Now, wouldn't a school be the first one not to?
No, but I mean, if we just lived to the federal holidays that are identified, you're saying that creates you a problem?
Well, here's what happens, because certain people that work for certain places like Pfizer, EB, et cetera, they get like, I think someone mentioned just about everything but Groundhog Day off. So it's a high traffic day for us for like residential people. They're doing fix-up stuff. You know, it's not a commercial construction day. It's like when we get our residential people. It's like with Home Depot and Lowe's, their busiest day are the weekends and those holidays. And ironically, I went through the holidays and Walmart is open every single one except for two, which is crazy because again, they're retail. Well, I'm retail too, but I don't want all of them. I just want the, you know, the ones that aren't, the stock exchange is open on some of those, and I have a list, but I don't want to bore you to death with my research. But if the New York Stock Exchange is open, I think normal small business struggling to survive should also be open. And again, we can go over, you know, Labor Day, I get it, 4th of July, I understand, you know, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, Easter, Memorial Day, all four of those, but like Columbus Day, yeah, and like I say, Veterans Day, you know, my uncle was in the Navy also, and he, ironically, last Veterans Day, a couple of his VFW friends came and bought product on that day. Weird, but so most of them I understand, but there's just a few that I think we really need to look into.
Well, that's where I was.
What's that, sir?
I'm trying to get the days that you think we should not be treating as a holiday.
Oh, the ones, I think, Columbus Day, I believe. Veterans Day. Well, let me give you the ones I think that we should focus on, which would be New Year's Day, Easter, Memorial Day, 4th of July, Labor Day, Thanksgiving, and Christmas.
Does anyone else wish to address this in the public? Yes.
Another thing here, section 3B, the special permit, the excavation, grading, and processing, stockpiling, and sale of naturally occurring earth products. Asphalt and concrete don't exist in nature as far as I'm concerned. It's pretty clear, naturally occurring earth products. Goes back to Bill.
I just want to add to that, the last bit of that sentence is from the property. So naturally occurring. So it reads, this is a permitted use. The excavation, grading, processing, stockpiling, and or sale of naturally occurring earth material from the property. Things they're excavating on site.
It's just their generation of their items.
Right, so that's an allowed use, that's right. So it's excavation of the natural materials on site.
So they are allowed to excavate asphalt on site. That's what it's saying. But it doesn't, it's not addressing importing.
No, another section addresses importing. That's right.
And that's important. Does anyone else in the public wish to address us on anything? Staff have anything? Yes, Dan?
I just have a few things. And I will be much briefer than Mr. Whittle, I promise.
No cardboard box.
No, I did not bring props. Thank you for your courtesies this evening as it's gone on a little longer than we wanted to. I just wanted to address some of the things and the comments that were made, sort of starting at the back. Mr. Wakis did just read paragraph 3B that talks about earth products, but as staff said, that's the section that's referring to from the property. 3A says excavation, grading, processing, stockpiling of imported earth products imported to the property. So that is covered by the special use permit. Number two, the definition of fill. I can tell you because I was involved in it and I helped draft it back in 2007 with that stipulated, or excuse me, 2007 with the appeal to the Zoning Board of Appeals. asphalt, concrete, those types of materials were always being imported to this property. That was part of the material coming in. The term of art in the industry is fill, earth products. It's exactly what Mr. Zod was saying, which is anything that can then go back into the ground as far as, you know, a base layer for putting in a foundation or putting in a septic system. The issue that was the primary concern of staff at the time was that it did not include anything hazardous, and it did not include demolition debris, boards, nails, that kind of stuff. That's the reason for the reference to that paragraph 5, everything accepted out except for that last sentence. The fill there was, it's still anticipating concrete, asphalt, and everything, but that it's clean, it's not hazardous, and it is not building materials. Long story short, that section 5 was exempted out of the special use permit in 2011 for a very particular reason. When we settled the zoning board of appeals case, originally the decision, the parties had agreed that for every cubic yard of material that was brought in, an identical cubic yard of on-site material would be harvested. After we started getting into the process, the town of Groton and their staff determined that, well, that maybe is not the best thing for the neighborhood as a whole, because then we'd be tearing down 77 acres to the west for everything that was being imported in. So the town at the time decided that the better way to do it is to control the size of the operation. And that's when they came out with the application, or excuse me, the permits and the paragraphs that talk about the amount of material that can physically be stored on the site, no more than 115,000 cubic yards of material. And it was determined that importation could continue. It did not have to be at this 1-to-1 ratio, but we were going to limit the importation because there's only so much room there, and you can't have more than 15,000 cubic yards on site at any one time. So that's why that whole paragraph 5 of the stipulation was accepted out of permit number 321, because the town wanted to get away from this 1-to-1 importation versus naturally occurring from the site. That way we've been able to basically preserve 77 acres of this property and still maintain and be able to sell a cucumber for $1. So I think looking at and focusing in on one sentence of fill and ignoring the rest of the documentation, which all talks about earth products, processing. You're going to process something you're importing. It's logical that it's going to be something hard that you have to kind of break down. All of the stipulated judgment and the special use permit talk about processing earth products and processing of materials imported to the site. So we think that we would concur that asphalt, concrete, so long as it's clean, not hazardous, is included in importation. I would also just say very briefly, obviously, in going to the question about how often you can renew, obviously Mr. Wakis would like it every 2 years. There was a question about can you go longer? We went 3 years this last time. I will say this, the language that's used in 5A of special permit 321 says that the special permit shall be subject to renewal every 2 years. Okay, it doesn't say permit number 321 shall be renewed every 2 years. The intent at the time, if I remember correctly, was that this commission would have the discretion to decide it. You can make us come back in every 2 years if you want to. You can make us come back in every 2 years if you think it's appropriate, but you have the discretion to extend that if you want to. We're subject to coming in every 2 years. We're not obligated or mandated to come back in every 2 years. That's up to your discretion. So if you decide that 3 years makes sense, if you decide 4 years makes sense, or if you decide 2 years makes sense, we will do whatever the town says, and we will be back here the next time you call upon us. Other than that, I don't have anything to add. I probably had a few things, but the show and tell portion went a little long, and I don't want to test anybody's patience any longer than necessary. So I just want to thank you for your consideration.
Could I be heard just briefly?
Yes, yes.
Just with respect to the renewal period, I mean, I think it, it's pretty clear that in the special permit that it's expected this will be renewed every 2 years. And I believe the reason is so that compliance with the special permit would be required and could be reviewed every 2 years. So I would recommend that it continues to be renewed every 2 years.
Does anyone else in the public wish to address us on anything? Staff have any additional information they feel we identified?
No,
Does anyone on the commission have any needs to be addressed? I can make a motion then to close the public hearing on the special permit 377.
Second.
Moved in second by Halzon. Respond, yeah. We'll vote on the, does anyone have any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, we'll vote on the motion to close the public hearing. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? Motion is carried unanimously. Our next item is consideration of the public hearing. Hearings. We have one item on hearing on special permit 377.
So I'll be honest, I wasn't sure how this was going to go, or if you were going to close the hearing tonight. So I, for your consideration, I did do a draft motion for you. You may have heard some other things tonight that you want to include. But at any rate, I'll pass it out to folks. So you can see that what I've suggested here is a 2-year renewal with the conditions that the special permit 377 and 321 also apply, with the following modifications regarding the sand stockpile. With regards to the holidays, spelling them out, I spelled out absolutely every single one of them. So, and then with regards to signage on Yetter Road.
Does the applicant have any concerns? Yes. No.
It does.
We might have to have a discussion about which one.
No, I don't mind. Yes, no, that's why I brought it out. Is maybe it makes sense not to include some. I mean, it's really.
Well, it does, but I think this is going to take actually some thought.
Yeah.
Before we even dismiss certain holidays out of hand. Might be some problems with that.
Well, that's, yeah. Maybe we want to leave it. But I don't know if there are people have any other concerns with this or just the holiday question.
I have other concern. I have other concern.
Oh, well, did you want to go? Other than the holidays, do you have anything?
The only possible thing that I might have is that 180, increased to 185. I don't think it's very egregious not to have 185. I think it's worth as we trim it back down. The part of the idea being that make the stockpiles up at the level.
So that's what the 185.
But it's actually a little higher.
Oh, it is?
It's a little high.
It is.
So it's not much higher, but it's a little higher. So we're trying to, let's hold the line someplace, so I keep it about level. Maybe the answer is, it's only 180 or 175, and it doesn't have to be 170. But it is clearly a little higher. It's a mountain of the high side. If anybody wants to look across at it, shouldn't have to see a pile in the dirt. That's kind of what this was avoiding.
You want to change it like to maybe level of, not to exceed the level of adjacent property.
Yeah, and that would work for me. That would work for me. Specifying specifically.
I think I'd be more comfortable with the number.
Oh, is that-
Because when the permits are renewed, a surveyor goes out and
Oh, they
and
do.
identifies, oh, absolutely, that's the plan.
Now we don't have GPS, so just as maybe the answer is, I mean, I've looked at the picture and it's sitting on a mountain, so it should be around 170 now, right?
175.
It's supposed to be 175?
Yeah.
That's
And we're
fine.
asking for 185.
Okay, then 175 sold right. Just the 175. Didn't sound like it was too egregious to just get taking some time to bring them back into compliance. From the adjacent property, from the adjacent land. It's not level, it's actually down right now. No, because it's level, it goes downhill. They're filling up a low point. This is how high that is. So plenty of place to, it's not like they're just spreading it at 0 feet. Nearby is something else that's natural, that's at 170.
I'd like to go understand that.
Now, when you look at a picture, you see that it looks like there's a sitting on a mountain. The idea is that it doesn't need to look like that. Back down to one side. It will look like a mountain from the adjacent property. It'll make much difference. But then why not 15, why not 30? So the whole point is to stop and say, if it was a grassy hill, if there was planting on top of it, then there'd be absolutely no concern. But it's not ever. This is still material. This is all. So.
Could I just make just a
No, I'm sorry.
clarification?
You can't, the only people that can talk is
No, I understand.
voting members on the commission.
Understood. Oh, no, I know.
Wow, where we shouldn't be, so that's why it's non-conforming. We're playing corn on it, looks great, but it's awkward. So that's kind of why it was like that, I think. I can see maintained. It's even altered. What the difference? 180.
That's what I was saying.
I'm okay with that. Sure, down some, but what you want to hold the line someplace that we thought about it. And didn't just think, well, it was a good year for importing materials and can we have 200 next year? So,
Accommodation will go fun.
You had some concerns. Too.
Yes. My concern is, and I guess for those of you who don't realize this, I have sat in on the widow's presentations, or I guess longer. I want to think about for quite a while, decades, I guess. And in fact, I saw my name on the surveyors, prints and everything. And I said, wow, forgot I had to be there, but and you were there too, yes. And I've been to the site, I've seen it too. And I have to say that over time, since the first time it came in, I would say the number of topics that are quote unquote problem topics and the number of people involved in talking about problems really continues to go down. And I know this is might sound fairly subjective, but I know if you did a time analysis, how much time we used to spend on all the applications and everything, and the public comment, which is good. We want to hear them. Not saying we don't, but it's just I would say the number, the whole size of the problem that I see really reducing over time. And I would strongly recommend that we go to a 4-year period for the permit. Because I remember the commission when we were, first we did 2 years, and then we went to the 3-year. We thought that they had the number of complaints, the time of complaints, the resolution, stuff like that was such, so we felt comfortable with going to 3 years. And we believe that was, I don't remember if it was unanimous, but it certainly was supported and passed, it was voted upon. And I think the same thing is true now, maybe even more so. And so I think it is a burden, of course, you understand that. We go through this all the time, it's a burden for us too. And so I think, given that the Whittles are, they do keep trying to, live with the neighbors, live with the neighborhood in the town. I would real strongly recommend that we go to a 4-year on the special permit 377.
Anything else? Did you have any concerns?
I would agree with 180. I would agree with 3 year, holding that 3 years, and I would agree with reducing the number of holidays.
Which holidays are we talking about?
Well, I don't think it was mentioned President's Day, Martin Luther King birthday, Juneteenth, and
What were the ones that
I mean,
And
and
possibly
possibly
Veterans Day.
listed here, there are certain ones you think we can.
then Rick Whittle.
Columbus Day.
I think you wrote it down.
Yes, I have.
Just find it listed without here.
We don't have to agree with it.
Was New Year's Day,
It
Easter,
was to eliminate, yeah.
So with New Year's Day,
Yeah,
Easter.
oh, that's Good Friday.
Memorial Day, 4th of July, Labor Day, Thanksgiving, and Christmas were the ones suggested by the applicant.
I think I Columbus, President, and Martin Luther King, and Juneteenth.
I can't believe President's Day. People come. President's Day in the middle of whatever. Oh, you want to take out President's Day?
Yeah, I think it was, Martin Luther King.
Interesting is that I went from working private sector to government, back in like my career. Private sector, the first list that we got from the Eagles here was about it, if that.
Mhm.
Worked for the government and it became a long list. So I
Right.
think there is kind of a basis for it, is that private sector does not take all these days off.
That's right. Oh, yeah, I don't, I don't see a problem. So New Year's, we want to leave in Martin Luther King's Day.
That one, I think we might have to leave that,
Leave it in.
we might have to.
President's Day, you think we can start up in a tradition that you think we can take out? Good Friday seems to be a big time off for Connecticut.
Yeah, maybe we have time off, but it's not in my house, though.
No, I mean, I was moving to Connecticut and was surprised to see it. Yeah,
You're saying Good Friday as opposed to Easter,
yeah. Well, Easter's on Sunday.
right? So,
Memorial Day, I think we're gonna leave it.
Memorial Day weekend.
Juneteenth.
Yeah, these days that would be the weekend. Oh, sorry, what-
No, July 4th. What about Juneteenth?
Well, I don't think people take that off the list.
That's it.
I think that's what.
It's a celebration, but not take it.
Yeah. No, it's really just taking it out for their really sales. Labor Day, Veterans Day.
Taking out Columbus Day.
Columbus Day, taken out.
Yep.
Veterans Day. Most people treat that as.
Yep.
Or leaving it.
Yeah. Okay, I don't know about
Thanksgiving, Christmas, holiday.
Yeah.
So we take out presidents. The 19th of Columbus. And then we got the time period. We got the staff recommended, and then the Sue recommended, and then a compromise.
It's the recommending, or you just write it down.
It's what was listed in the special permit.
Right,
That's why.
So you get that.
Well. So, what are people's feelings on the time?
3 years. 3 years from
I
now.
don't mind 3 or 4. I think 2 is.
Well, 2.5.
I'm for 3 to see if your pattern of diminishing complaints keeps going down.
Well, we have to, so there's nothing to do. Yeah.
No, I'm saying, let's see if
No,
this
this
keeps
would be
going.
changed. That's in front.
This is 2.
So it's not, I'll go back to 3. Because we, by looking at the complaints, it's really almost known. Better on.
I just suggest it's a detail that it's a technical detail, so you can put it that way. The sign should be posted at the road that enters the fees, entrance only. It should say all others use Gold Star Highway 184 and direct them the direction that is of benefit to go. Otherwise, they're going to go whichever way they went, and half of it's going to be the wrong way.
We want to change entrance only. And to make it too big, then people won't read it.
No, it's just, they do want to use the other entrance, otherwise they don't know what to do.
Oh, yeah, farm entrance.
Only, but then say use.
Oh, use, Route 180.
4 and an arrow direction arrow. That was, don't just say which way, don't figure out which way.
Well, they use Route 184 for entrance.
It's not that big a sign.
Or if it's too many words, then they ignore it.
Exactly.
That's why, no, I don't mind putting that down, use what to do. That makes
I'm
sense.
easy.
No, I mean, if it's gonna be there, you want it protected. Or does anybody have any other?
So I just got 2 things, just for clarification. Tom had also recommended an internal sign, directing folks to leave by 184, Route 184. And what did you guys come up with for the stockpile? Reducing it to
180.
180. All right, well, I would suggest that we take the applicant's offer and that be reduced within 90 days of the issuance of the special permit.
Or you wanna add that?
So it would say that the sand stockpile shall be reduced to elevation 180 within 90 days of the issuance of the special permit. Yeah, that's a good idea. I actually also have a time limit, or a time within which that sign has to be posted. Again, within 90 days.
You're saying 90, within 90 days of what action?
Of the issuance of the special permit.
Want to have a sign posted.
Inside the operation that directs exiting traffic to the 184.
Yeah, an internal sign shall be erected to direct all non-farm traffic to Route 184. This sign shall be erected within 90 days of special.
Could actually just be no exit through here because of your own property, they, farm people will just ignore it.
This for farm, the same way.
It's for farming.
Yeah.
So,
Farm traffic only, that would be. There we go.
Farm traffic.
no, you put it that way or not. That's fine.
Farm access.
I can see why I never got involved.
I'll make a motion to approve special permit number 377 to renew special permit number 321 for 3 years, subject to the following conditions and findings. One, special permit number 377 is subject to the conditions of special permit number 321 and number 368 is filed in Groton Land Records with the following modification. A, the sand stockpile shall be reduced to 180 feet within above mean sea level within 90 days of issue of the special permit. B, for conditions found in special permit 321 and number 368, state and federal holidays include New Year's Day. Well, Martin Luther King's birthday, Good Friday, Memorial Day, July 4th, Labor Day, Veterans Day, Thanksgiving, Christmas as observed. C, the sign shall be posted at the Yetter Road entrance that reads, quote, farm entrance only, use Route 184 for entry within 90 days of issue of a special permit. E, an internal sign shall be installed stating, quote, farm access only, in the quotes, shall be installed within 90 days of issue of the special permit. The commission finds that this application as conditions complies with sections 9.4 and 5.1-2. E of the zoning regulations and will not cause any potentially significant environmental impacts on adjacent water bodies, including Long Island Sound. Is there a second? Seconded by Sue Sutherland. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, we'll vote on the motion to approve special permit 377. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? Motion is carried unanimously. Shall we take a little recess? resume. Call the planning commission meeting back to order again. I don't see Deb's name up there.
I guess she left.
You went home,
I guess she-
but it gets recorded then.
Oh, yeah, it does. She was listening for quality.
Oh,
Really, yeah, we've been having some quality issues.
we don't have that funny. Oh, it's okay. If I could think from outer space. All right, so next item on the agenda is approval of minutes of the previous meetings. Entertain a motion for approving the minutes of September 15th.
So moved.
So moved. Is there a second? Second. Moved in second, How's second? You moved it. Does anyone have any corrections?
Just have a little one, on page 2, above the box there, where it says motion. I got my time. It says to close the public hearing at 7:08. Was that right? Did we start at 6 or something? No, we started at 7, so I don't think that's fine.
I think you're correct. That is wrong.
It's
Yeah, okay,
8:08.
we'll correct it.
All right.
Do you know what time?
Yeah, we can find that out.
I would have picked that up. Just assume the times.
Special.
Yeah, but this is a regular.
It's a regular.
This is special.
Started at 7.
Yeah, I wouldn't, I think. Maybe it was 18. Does anyone have any other corrections? Okay. We'll vote on approval of the minutes of September 13th as amended. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion is carried unanimously. We'll entertain a motion then for approval of the September 21st special meeting. Moved. Second. Moved and second. Did you get that? So.
Yeah, I have it seconded by Howard.
Yeah. Okay, does anyone have any corrections on the special meeting minutes?
The question more than anything, we don't have the consultant.
Or is attendance?
Yeah, and they should be down there at least as some,
They should
find
be,
somehow.
yeah. Or present as a presenter.
What do you wish to do?
I guess, I think they. Well, he does say, yeah, it says that in the first thing, it says Jeff Davis, Horsey, Witten Group, review the responses.
Like, but you should have it under, I think under roll call. because
No,
you-
it's not roll call because he's not part of the commission of this thing.
Oh, so like commission staff.
Yeah,
Okay,
he's
that's
like,
fine.
he's like an applicant,
Okay, no big deal, that's fine.
as long as it's names in it.
His name's in there.
I would think that's what we normally do.
I think we listed, but anyway, that's okay.
Hmm?
I was just thinking we listed it before.
Well, he's really an applicant, he's equivalent to an applicant. Hmm? Anyone have any other items? Questions, typos? Well, vote then on approval of the September 21st special meeting minutes. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion is carried unanimously. Public communications, does anyone on the commission have any communications to report? Staff, anyone in the public wish to address this on anything not on the agenda? Okay, special permits, we have none, subdivisions, none. Now we move on to site plans. SI 82209, Ledges 375 Drossy. The applicant is waiting.
Patiently, Commissioner.
Make this presentation. If you want to start,
Excellent.
you state your name.
Absolutely.
You want to speak?
Yeah, can we load up the slideshow and I'll start? It was there.
It was there, I know it was.
So,
Yeah, that's supposed to be open. Yeah.
you just, you make that full size. The way to present it, but probably will work.
Yeah, it's just scrolling.
That's fine.
Let
I
me get
work with
these guys out of the way. Okay.
That's fine. Good evening. For the record, my name is Bill Sweeney. I'm a partner and a land use attorney with the law firm of Tobin Carberry in New London. As always, I appreciate the opportunity to appear before you this evening, even at this late hour. I represent Marion Realty Partners, which is a multifamily developer based in Wynwood, Pennsylvania, which has submitted an application to the commission for site plan approval for a 201 unit multifamily residential development to be constructed at 375 Drosdick Drive. Just right click.
Or the notes, it's just a scroll, this isn't a,
Oh,
yeah, it's just a PDF.
try to do that. Build it eventually. Joining me tonight is Richard Algian. Richard is a principal with Marion Realty Partners. I also have joining us, it's not up on the slide, but Mike Moore. Mike is with Platinum Builders, who's part of the development team. I have Seamus Moran, who is our project civil engineer with Lorero Engineering Associates. And I have both Talia Canistra and Peter Bartash, who are our project architects with Portland Companies. Tonight, I know it's late, and we're going to try to be as brief as possible and try to move this along for the sake of everybody who's remaining, who I think is just the commission and the applicant and his team. But this is not a special permit application. It is not a public hearing tonight, but we still have to provide you, and we intend to provide you a full overview of our proposal so you can review our compliance with your site plan objectives and the conditional requirements for multifamily dwelling development in town. My intent is to provide you an overview, highlighting some of the key aspects of the project, and particularly the site itself and basic compliance with the underlying zoning regulations. Mr. Moran is going to review the existing conditions, really focus on the project layout and engineering details associated with the project, including parking, stormwater, utilities, and landscaping. Then Ms. Canistra, she's going to walk you through our architectural elevations and floor plans for the project, as well as describing and giving you some detail on our outdoor and indoor amenity spaces. Finally, I'll wrap up the presentation tonight with a review of your criteria for decision. Some highlights. My client has entered into a contract to purchase a vacant 17.61 acre parcel, which is located in an RM or residential multifamily district here in Groton. This property, is we're going to show you some aerial photos in a second, is sandwiched between the developed AHIPA, the Ledges, and the Solstice Senior Living projects on Drosdick Drive, if you're familiar with that area of town. You should be aware, I believe you are aware, that under your zoning regulations in the RM district, multifamily dwelling projects like the one we're presenting are permitted by site plan approval under specified conditions laid out in the regulations for multifamily dwelling development. I would also note for the record that Marion Realty Partners, my client, already owns and manages the Ledges project, which is a 339 unit multifamily development that was built back in 2003. And it's located just west of this proposed site. And there's actually going to be an interconnection between the two projects, which we'll show you this evening. My client sees the proposed development of this new project as really a natural extension of the original Ledges project. We intend to continue to cater to a younger demographic of potential tenants who are looking to move into Groton for employment. Again, primarily within the submarine industry and the military, but also other people that are looking to move into southeastern Connecticut. As I know, I'm sure the commission is keenly aware that there's a significant demand for new housing here in Groton to support the economic growth that's going on in this region. And my client intends to build upon their previous success and their reputation and track record with the Ledges development to provide a modern housing opportunity and to construct an attractive multifamily development that's really tailored to today's market. We're going to show you plans for the project in a few moments. You're going to see that we have made great efforts to try to preserve as much of the wooded nature of this site as possible. But we also tried to limit the footprint of our actual development to previously disturbed areas of the site as well. And we'll talk a little bit about that. Our project itself is comprised of a multi-story, 250,000 square foot apartment building with structured podium parking located beneath the building itself, surface parking lots, and a total of 265 off-street parking spaces. Within the building itself, and Ms. Canistra will go through our floor plans, we are proposing 48 studio apartments, 86 one-bedroom apartments, and 67 two-bedroom apartments. We're going to share with you our plans for incorporating both indoor and outdoor amenity spaces comprised of courtyards, work from home spaces, fitness and lounge areas, as well as various storage options within this new apartment building. We also have tried to build the building. You're going to show, and Mr. Moran will, and Ms. Meester will show you, that we really tried to use the natural topography of the site. We're constructing what I believe is a pretty unique multifamily building on this location, built into the terrain and stepping down the natural slope of the property toward Drosdick Drive. And we've got some really nice renderings. Hopefully we'll explain that and make that clear to you what we're trying to do. Access to the site is going to be directly off of Drosdick Drive. But as I said before, there will be interconnection into the Ledges 1 project. The site is going to be fully served by municipal utilities, so there's no wells or septic. This is fully public water, public sewer. And from our perspective, this kind of high quality multifamily living environment is going to make this a really attractive offering in the current marketplace. Move to slide 5. This is just a locus map to try to get you oriented on where we're looking at. The project site is where this red dot is, and then sort of the ring is sort of our neighboring properties here. As I mentioned before, the subject property is north of Drosdick Drive. There's Drosdick Drive coming up from Long Hill Road, and it's south of I-95. It's sandwiched between the HEPA projects, which is right here, the Ledges 1 project right here, and then the Solstice Senior Living project right here. It's basically that last remaining piece that's in between all those other projects. Obviously, the surrounding neighborhood is distinctly multifamily in character, and your plan of conservation and development calls for this to be developed for residential housing at a moderate density, which is exactly what the surrounding neighborhood is and what we're proposing tonight as well. So we're compliant with the plan of conservation and development. This is a site map with an aerial photo, just giving you a blow up of this aerial photo you just saw. This yellow outline denotes the parcel that's in question. Again, this is about just under 18 acres. It's primarily wooded, particularly in the northern half of the property. It is encumbered by high tension power lines that are under the control of Groton Public Utilities, running over 95 diagonally in this direction. It also includes an area of disturbance. It was actually disturbed during the construction of the Ledges 1 project. This was an area for stockpiling. And what you're going to see today is that we're actually developing within the area of disturbance, so we don't expand our area of disturbance outside of what's already been disturbed on the property. Let's go to slide 7. I don't know if you had a chance to get out to Drosdick Drive this week or in the last couple of weeks, but this is sort of the frontage along Drosdick Drive. This is the HEPA project right here off to the left. This property right here is the 375 Drosdick. There is a service road, a dirt service road that enters the property right now. This goes up and connects into Ledgewood Road, which is the back of the Ledges project. People walk this all the time. Right now, people walk their dogs, they go on runs and hikes back and forth through this property. I did, at Deb's request, did a little bit of title research. There are established cross easements, reciprocal cross easements between the properties to allow for the two projects to be interlinked like that. You can see that It's a wooded site. You see there's a sort of an area of clearing right beyond this frontage. That area of clearing is that disturbed area that was disturbed during the Ledges 1 project, basically colonized with invasive species that we're actually ripping out, taking care of as part of our wetland approval for this project. I should say that we did get that wetland approval a couple of months ago. Let's go for slide 8. You know, one of the things that I really liked about working with Marion for the first time is this is a company that believes in actually looking at your site constraints before you start designing a project. And this project certainly has been designed with an acknowledgement of the constraints of this site. So as I said before, we have this common access easement connecting the back of the Ledges project out to the dirt road. Here's the dirt road right here. So this has to be continued to be used and open for access. We have the high tension power lines here that Groton Public Utilities maintains. We have a swath of wetland, that's this lighter green that sort of cuts through the property. And like I said, we did get wetland approval for this project as well. We also have this quadrant up in the northeast corner of the site, which is mature upland forest. It is inaccessible without crossing the wetlands. But in our discussions with the Wetland Commission, there was a concern about future development in this area. And so as a condition of our wetland permit, we are placing this entire area into a permanent conservation easement to preserve this upland forest area. And that was something that we talked about, you know, quite closely with the Wetlands Commission. It's something that we're doing, and we're still showing it on our site plan as well. This area will be permanent conservation space. What that leaves us is sort of this oddly shaped area in the southern part of the site, which is primarily what was disturbed during the previous construction project. So to make sure that we have the necessary buffers and setbacks that are required in your zoning regulations, and also to have the room to provide the high quality units and amenities we're providing, we've tried to put our building footprint sort of in the central portion of that orange sort of the orange dotted line sort of polygon. And so try to keep that to the center of it so we can maintain reasonable buffers to the HEPA project, to the wetlands to the northeast, and make sure that we have those access ways. What we decided to do is rather than build out, we tried to build up and build into the terrain. The property slopes generally down from 95, the high point down toward Drosdick Drive. So we built, or proposing the building be built into the existing slope of the property in this location. It's sort of a strange sort of H-shaped building. And I'm going to let Talia, Ms. Canistra and Mr. Moran talk a little bit more about that design in a second. Just for a zoning perspective, here's our zoning data table. From a bulk and dimensional standpoint, we meet or exceed all the minimum requirements of the RM district. But we have taken advantage, which is allowed in the regulations, to increase the height of our building to 55.7 feet above average grade. And to do so, we have to increase our typical front side and rear setbacks. Typically, these are 30, 30, and 20. Because of the height, we were required to add additional setback distance as well to allow for a building that's slightly taller. Again, this is allowed in the RM zone. I would also just point out before I turn this slide, we have 239 parking spaces is the minimum requirement. We only have slightly more than that at 265. We're parking the project at about 1.27 spaces per unit, which we think we can function operationally. We're not over parking the site, I think is the point I want to make. And I would also point out that our unit density is, you know, we're allowed to have a one dwelling unit per every 2,000 square feet. We're only proposing one unit per 3,800 square feet, almost half of the density that we're allowed on the site. So we're not overdeveloping the site. We're really developing the site within its capacity. And then finally, the last slide for me is we wanted to demonstrate for the record that we have these expanded side and front yard setbacks to allow for a slightly higher building. We did the calculation and we've submitted that into the record to show that the building can be a little bit higher than the standard height because of the side and front yard setback increases that we've provided. At this point, what I'm going to do is turn the project over or our presentation over to Mr. Moran to walk you right through the actual site plan. And then we'll switch to our architect and I'll come back and try to finish up. Thank you so much. Sweaty.
Thank you, Mr. Sweeney. Good evening, Commission. Thank you for having me tonight. My name is Seamus Moran, PE in Connecticut, and I work for Lorero Engineering Associates. I'll go over the existing conditions plan very briefly. I think Mr. Sweeney did a great job of presenting that already. And I'll go through the layout, grading and drainage plan, some utilities, and the soil erosion and sediment control plan. And then I'll pass it off. So I was originally going to go up to the screen, but I think it's easier with the cursor. If you guys can follow my cursor to see what we're doing. So what you're looking at here is that existing conditions plan, that property line that we discussed. This is the HEPA property. That access drive, which is very small on this page, is right here into our site. This here is Drastic Drive. And there's a three-way stop intersection. I think it's with Michelle Lane. Michelle Lane. There's currently a three-way intersection, stop controlled intersection. And our access drive here, which you can see the dirt path that comes up through and connects to the existing driveways for the Ledges 1 property. This here, you see my cursor, that's the wetland, about 5.5 acres of wetland on the property. And there is, within Drastic Drive, there is water, sewer, gas, and electric. Moving on to the site layout plan. What you're looking at here is, again, right where my cursor is where that existing access drive is to get to the back of the property. We're gonna obviously formalize that. We'll put a 24-foot wide access drive in. It goes up and connects directly into the existing drive up here for the Ledges 1. Off of that access drive, we have a loop road that surrounds our building. So what you can see here in the building is this backwards H structure. You can see part here, the cut through here, and there's another leg here. So that's the floors 2 through 5, which are the residential units. Below that is the garage level. What we're looking at is the garage level. So you could, what happens is if you're at Drastic Drive, you enter the site. Drastic Drive is at elevation 28. You're coming all the way up. I believe it's elevation 72 at the top here. So you're climbing a grade here. And the very front, this lower parking level is elevation 34. As you continue to climb, you get to the garage level, which is drive under at elevation 45. And then the back of the property, as you get around to the backside, is elevation 55 or so. So you're climbing essentially 10 feet with every elevation change in the building. As Mr. Sweeney pointed out, the application says there's 65 parking spaces. Through the iterations, actually, that's been reduced to 258. We lost a few here and there. Particularly in this area here, we lost a few to provide access for maintenance to the power lines. So we lost a few. So we're actually down to 258 parking spaces. And of those, 137 of those spaces are exterior around the building on the loop road. And 121 of those are within the garage parking level. There is, what I want to point out is there's three separate recreational courtyards, as I'm sure Tally will get into. There's at the back of the building, what you can see here is this hatch here. This is an at-grade patio. So as I mentioned, that's elevation 55. There's a pass through the building into another patio, which you'll see is actually above grade because as the grade continues to fall off, this patio is raised above grade, it's above the parking level. And those are two separate patios. And then there's a third little recreational space on the lower level here, which is a level down from those two. So in total, we have 31,500 square feet of outdoor recreational space. You can't see it here, but there's also some exterior parking bicycle racks. There's one up here and there's one down in this location here as well. There's also an internal bike storage room on the garage level as well. So eight exterior bike racks and 37 interior bike racks. It's very tough to see on here, but there's also a sidewalk that connects. There's an existing sidewalk along Drowsy Drive. We're proposing a sidewalk that connects into that and follows into our property. You can follow the cursor all the way around our building. And also, as you get up here, there's a crosswalk to access across the driveway and then connect into the existing Ledges property. So there's an interconnected walkway right from the Ledges development right through onto Drowsy Drive and around our building. I'll move on to the stormwater plan next. And I will keep this somewhat high level, but if there are questions, I'm certainly happy to answer those. So the way the stormwater system works is, as you know, as we've mentioned a couple different times, the stormwater is coming from above the property, working its way from north to south, and also from kind of west to east towards the wetland. So as we put the building in place, we had to develop 3 separate stormwater areas. The first is a subsurface infiltration system with isolator rows designed to infiltrate and treat the water quality volume, and actually in excess of the water quality volume and the water quality flow. The second is a water quality infiltration basin, which is in the southeast corner where my cursor is. And the last is a subsurface detention system. So we didn't have the separation distance to groundwater in this location down here. So it's a detention system for a portion of the access drive and a portion of the lower pavement that will detain stormwater and discharge to the existing catch basin in Drowsy Drive. Again, these are sized at a minimum for the water quality event, which is the 1-inch storm, but for most cases, they're actually in excess of that as well. The outlet locations, there's an outlet location here for the northern section, an outlet location here for the basin, and again, the third outlet locations into Drowsy Drive. The utilities, as I mentioned before, water, sewer, electric, and gas are available. Actually, the gas has to be extended up Drowsy Drive a few hundred feet, but we do have the note on there that Eversource, we requested that to be extended. It will tie in for gas. There's a 16-inch water main in Drowsy Drive that we've been working with Groton Utilities on that. So there's actually a 12-inch. We're going to be tying into the 16-inch with the 12-inch that will run up the access drive and connect into an existing 12-inch stub from the Ledges property. So it'll be a loop system, and then off of that loop system, we will have an 8-inch loop line around our building with 4 hydrants off of that. Off of the 12-inch main, we'll also have our domestic and fire protection for the building coming off of that. Sanitary sewer, there's a sewer lateral in the street that already comes across to our property. We'll just show it, where we have a line shown out to a drop manhole, to another drop manhole to connect into the sanitary sewer. And then electric, there's a transformer here where we will pull primary, secondaries, and telephone cable, all that into the site. Transformers, we will be working with Groton Utilities once we have the demands to determine, how many transformers we need on the site.
Is underground?
Yes, correct. All of it's underground. Yep. The next 2 pages are 2 soil erosion sediment control plans. One is the first phase of development. We'll create all of our temporary sediment basins, temporary sediment traps. So that way we are ready for construction. So that's what you see here. There's a temporary sediment trap in these locations, and the future basin will be used as a temporary sediment basin during construction. That's what you see on this plan. This is during development. After we've stabilized the site and we've got the building in place, we have all of our structures. We have our erosion control matting, silk fence, hay bales, construction entrances, erosion control matting, temporary soil stockpiles, all the fun stuff that's required. Last 2 sheets are better for viewing than me explaining. So we do have a landscaping plan that was prepared by our CR3 at Lorero. It's an in-house landscaping architecture company. So this is the landscaping plan. They've chosen native species. That's that. I can't really talk to the species or the plant types or anything like that, but I think it looks great. Last but not least is a wetland mitigation plan. This is something that Jim Cowan helped prepare for the wetlands application. For any work, any disturbance beyond we have a retaining wall that we're proposing. We do have a plant list, which is impossible to see at this scale. And it's color coded, and Jim will be out there to supervise and oversee the installation of the plantings to both remove the invasive species that's currently there and to help and assist the spot planting of the additional plantings, improve that buffer. So with that being said, I think we can move on to the more fun side of it, and unless there's questions immediately, otherwise we can hold them until the end. We can go over the architecture. Move on. Okay, sounds good.
I'll clear that. Hello, everyone. My name is Talia Canistra. I am partner and director of architecture at Port One Companies, the architect for the project. So I will just jump right into the design of the building and again, keep it at a high level unless you have specific questions. I'm happy to answer them. So this is the lowest level of the project. As Seamus was describing, Drosdick Drive is off here to the right at the lowest portion of the site. And this is rotated slightly from the plans that you were just looking at. So north is a little bit up and to the left, just to orient you all to what we're looking at here. But Drosdick Drive is off to the right. And then that parking lot that's in the front of the building here is located right here. And the orange dotted lines are indicating vehicular circulation. So what you do is come off of the road and up this main entry drive, or you can turn to the right and go across the front of the project where the main entry to the building is indicated by this blue arrow. Once you get into this amenity bar here, you have your main lobby where your leasing would be, you have your mail room, you have a small lounge area, some gaming space, and some work from home space. And then this area also connects you to your first stair and elevator core, which then brings you up to the next floor, which is the parking level here. And at the top of this stair and elevator core, it also connects you to the fitness space within the building, which is indicated by this yellow. Outside of the fitness space is that first courtyard level that we indicated. It's outdoor space that's shown in green. So there's an outdoor fitness space for yoga or anything that you want to do out in the sunshine. There's also some cabana spaces and just some soft seating and tables with umbrellas for people to gather and spend time outside. Right now, we're proposing an internal stair that connects you from that lower amenity space up to this outdoor space. Inside the garage, there are all of the parking spaces that Shane has outlined, and then also the bicycle storage room is off here shown in yellow. What you're seeing on the left-hand side of the screen is the building above us. So this hatched area is ground that it's unexcavated and it's actually above you here. So this whole entire side of the garage is buried into the ground, and that's where that stepping really starts to happen within the infrastructure of the building. These dashed lines again are showing vehicular circulation continuing up the hill and around the property on both sides. And then you have your garage entry where this larger orange arrow is shown. The last thing on this slide to note is that there is a loading space that's off to the side of the entry drive where trucks or move-in can pull off of the main driveway and get out of the way of anyone driving by. And that connects to a hallway, which is on the next floor that I'll show you. Once you move up to the first residential level here, this corridor brings you directly out to that loading zone. So the grades tie in and connect to your sidewalk into your loading, where your trash removal would be. You also connect to a secondary elevator in this space, and then it also brings you into your residential corridor. On this floor is where you have the two bars that break in half to connect your outdoor spaces here. So as Seamus had mentioned, we have this courtyard that's on the roof of the parking, so it's a little bit raised up from where the entry drive is. And then if you come back here, it connects all the way through, and that's at grade at the top of the hill. So you're really connecting these two zones and making sure that there's some transparency through the entire property. Within the building, we do have, you can see a little bit here, these smaller storage areas for tenants to use. There's mechanical rooms in there to support the building as well as rentable storage for those units. And the unit breakdown, as Bill had said, is studios, 1 beds and 2 beds. Within these courtyards, before I move through to the next slide, we have outdoor seating areas. There are some benches, tables, grilling spaces. If you'd like more detail about that, please just let me know. But generally, just different zones for the tenants to use to be able to break down that space and make sure that everyone feels comfortable. And then the unit types that we were showing here, proposing here, are the studio is in the bottom right, the 1 bedroom is in the upper right, and then the 2 bedroom is in the left-hand side. Right now, these we typically have in-unit laundry, there's in-unit storage, and then each unit has its own self-contained mechanical systems. So depending on the bathroom and bedroom count, those are all typical amenities within those units. And then this is just showing the typical upper floor where that residential bar connects over the cut through that was connecting the 2 courtyards. So only on the first level of residential does that pass through happen. And then the units fill in over the top. And I can show you some 3D imagery of that as well, just to help illustrate. Once we get up to the roof is proposed as a flat roof for this project, and all mechanical condensers for the units are contained within that roof structure. As you can see, they're centralized within the bars here, centered over the corridors. And what that does is it helps isolate any noise that could potentially come through, and it also helps shield all of the mechanical equipment from view. So we've indicated that with some diagramming here where the little red and blue blobs are people and those dashed lines are showing their view lines up. So from different vantage points throughout the site and against all of the roadways, there really is a nice setback to where that equipment might sit, and it's the parapets are raised up to help screen all of that infrastructure. So to help diagram out that stepping, we wanted to show you this in kind of a Lego block format of how the building is sitting together. So we have that main entry, that's this lowest block here. The fitness space is right above it, with the parking space that's gray but beyond it, and that's all the same level. And then you have your residential bar that sits above it. And then you can also see where that pass-through happens only on that first level of residential, connecting the 2 courtyards through, and then the green are the indications of those 3 landscaped areas. This is a little bit small scale, but we wanted to show you the elevations of all the primary facades around the building. We are using colors and materials that tie into the natural landscape of the property. We have neutral tones like a warmer tan, the green to really tie into the trees. And then we also have some a little bit industrial black railings to speak to the submarine manufacturing and everything of the town. We really wanted to make this feel like it was at home on this property. So we're also breaking down the scale of each of these elements, where this top elevation here is from the front. It's as if you're standing on Drosdick Drive looking at the property. So you have those 2 end caps basically of the bottom of the H, and then we're breaking that in half and really making it into a smaller scale gesture with balconies cutting across. This elevation here is against that entry drive that slopes through. So if you're coming up past the lobby into the garage door here and then up the hill beyond, we wanted to break that down where the center H bar comes through and shows itself on the middle of that facade, and then kind of separates where you have your public realm from your private realm. This elevation here is in the back where that at-grade courtyard is in the center, and then you have the two end caps of the H on the other side. And then this last elevation here is the side that's up against the wetlands and in the back of the property that really only would be accessible from tenants. Now for the fun stuff. We have renderings from Drosdick Drive. This is Drosdick Drive right here along the front of the image. And then you have your access drive coming all the way up the side there. You have your main entry lobby on the corner here, your courtyard spaces here, and then all of your residential areas above. This is a view if you were to come into that front parking area, kind of come across and hover a little bit, just to give you an indication of how those outdoor spaces are speaking to each other and working with indoor spaces. So you have some really nice activated street edge here where the building does step back and create this carved out space from the street where you're pushing a lot of that density back. And then if you come around the access drive, this is in the rear at the very top of the hill where this car would be driving beyond the garage entry and through that side access and kind of turn in to the back parking area here where you have that outdoor at grade patio space with potential grills and outdoor seating. So that's all we have. Thank you so much. If you have any questions, we can go back to any slide.
Just a few comments to wrap up, and then we can turn it over to you for any questions. Obviously, thank you for your time tonight. Your charge under your regulations and state statutes is to review our site plan in terms of compliance with your applicable zoning requirements. Unlike a special permit, that review is not qualitative. It's really a question of whether our application meets or exceeds the minimum requirements for multifamily dwelling development within the RM district. And if it does, then as a matter of law, this commission is required to approve the application. Just for the record, I would point out that within our submitted application materials and the testimony tonight, we have touched on all of the site plan objectives in section 9.5-4 of your regulations. We've demonstrated consistency with the plan of conservation and development. We've proposed a layout. We've talked with your fire and emergency services. We proposed a layout that provides for public safety and convenience site access and circulation through the site, turning radiuses for emergency vehicles. We've designed landscaping that enhances the project and protects adjacent properties. We certainly have respected the existing natural features of the site and actually tried to build our building into the slope rather than regrading the entire site. And we think that we've done that in a manner that really protects the multifamily character of the surrounding neighborhood. This is a building that is going to be unlike any other building in Groton. It's a building, quite frankly, that's going to be different than any other building in the market. I think it's going to be probably one of the best examples of modern multifamily development that we have in this region. And I think it's going to be something that the town can be proud of. In terms of applicable conditions for multifamily dwelling units, section 5.18G of your regulations has specific requirements for any multifamily project. In our materials, we've provided the required storage and laundry facilities within the building. We provided the proper percentage of units with private outdoor space in the form of either balconies that you saw in our renderings or patios on grade. We certainly have a creative and modern articulated building that has multiple levels and planes to break up massing, which is something that we're supposed to do. We have expanded our building setbacks to allow for greater height rather than being consumptive of land. We've built up rather than out. We've met our recreational requirements just on our outdoor courtyards, plus all that amenity space, including work at home space. I don't think there's another project in this area that has the kind of amenities this project is offering. We've got public water, we've got public sewer, we've got underground utilities. And I don't think we talked about it, but we have indoor solid waste and recycling in the building as well. So we don't have dumpsters out on the property. It's all inside. It's all collected inside and sent out through that loading space. So I think based on the compliance with your site plan objectives, and then with the conditional approval requirements of multifamily dwelling, we certainly meet and in my opinion, far exceed all of those requirements. And based on that, I would request action tonight in the form of an approval of our site plan. And again, I want to thank you for your time and attention. I know it's very late. My entire team is here, including the ownership group. If you have any specific questions about the project, we'd be more than happy to try to answer them at this time. So thank you.
Thank you. I just want to add a couple of things to the presentation. Excuse me. As was noted, Drosdick Drive does have a lot of multifamily, existing multifamily developments. Matter of fact, the entrance drive to this proposal is across from La Triomphe, that is Michelle Drive. So it's not just on that side of Drosdick Drive, it's on the other side as well. This property has had several approvals. All of them multifamily, one assisted living, one another apartment complex that were filed in land records and never built. Cross easements were filed at that time. So those easements do exist right now for access and utility connections between the two sites. With regards to parking, there is a requirement for electric vehicle charging. We do meet that as well as the make ready requirement. There is no lighting plan submitted with this. As I noted in my staff report, there's a photometric plan that is under development, but we don't have it in the package. This use is a conditional use in the zone, and as such, it's required to have buffers to adjacent residential properties, which seems a little odd given that it's multifamily to multifamily. But they do address that on the west side of the entrance drive with a retaining wall fence and landscaping as is one of the options in the buffer section. I think that's all I have.
Open it up for the commissioners. Any questions? Over to you, Al.
Okay. Well, I don't want to affect much here, but I just need to know the answer. How do you keep that street, which by the way is actually be Rock Hill according to the adjacent street? We're calling it the Ledgeland, but it's Rock Hill actually. When you go up to the top of, there's actually a nice beautiful sign that's already existing that points to your street and calls it Rock Hill. So it's Rock. I like that better. But anyway, how do you keep that from becoming a flume? It's a straight shot in a rainstorm. It's just going to be a flume. So how do you?
We do have a series of catch basins. I think every 75 or 100 feet on its way down that access drive to capture those.
One side or the other, the big crown to it. Because
It's from one side to the other. One side to the other, of course. It's from the building side to the exterior. Yes, correct. So it's to one side of the road, the exterior, the outside edge of the road.
I was a little puzzled. We're talking about the. Let me tell you the good news first, by the way, is that I took a measurement from it. I don't know if you recognize this, but the La Triomphe apartments across the way is that they have a sidewalk that goes through to Plaza Court. It's only maybe 600 feet from the front of your property to get to the post office on foot. It's 1,000 feet if you drive. So, and there's a sidewalk all the way. So there should be somebody kind of gear your people that way. So this can be a good project if they ever get their act together on Plaza Court. For the buffer on the west side, that one gives me a little heartburn. Just because we're going to be, part of our findings here is supposed to be that defines the wall, fence, and landscape plantings on the west side of the site meet the intent of regulations. But there's a 150-foot area where you leave yourself enough room for trees. The only plantings that are seem to be along there, I'm looking at the planting plan, everything 4 foot high tops except for the switchgrass. So there's nothing vertical in there. We're all around the rest of the site. And it also looks like due to this kind of clearing, everything between the building to the left and you're building, all that existing growth is going away. There's no room for it, so it's all being chopped out.
Scale is difficult on this.
Well, I did the math, I mean.
Yeah.
But I'm looking, I did look up what the plants were. And they're little plants.
Okay.
They're just shrubs that can bring the building against the building, and it's just switchgrass along the fence line, and that's it. So that there really isn't anything blocking this huge mass of a building. I don't care if it's broken up. It's there's kind of a reason for it, and I guess part of our requirement is pretty simple, in that it's also not just a block traffic noise, which you will have here, because that road is also going to become the entrance, the preferred entrance to everybody on the north end of the Ledges site. It'd be crazy to go through their own thing. That's going to be their road. So that's going to be a well-traveled road, but it will have no trees for almost 200 feet. There's something you can do to tweak that to make room for it, because that's kind of, even in your rendering, it's kind of a glaring thing. You just got a whole big area with nothing vertical green in that whole space.
This is something we can talk to the development team, but the regulations, I think it's 10 feet to the retaining wall. So we do have a 10-foot section between the property line and the retaining wall where we could potentially put something green in there besides the fence.
In fact, right now, I know it's going to be rough, because I know it's whole site's made of rock. But you seem to have centered the road in the middle of that, and maybe the trick is it can't always be centered. You need to push it to one side or another. I mean, you kind of fell into this by shoving everything over to the left as much as you could based on the setback. You let the setback arithmetic define where the building went.
It's a little bit of both.
It's also the wetlands, so.
It's also wetlands, I understand that.
And that's a big issue, because the edge of disturbance ends up basically where the existing mature tree line is right now.
Yeah.
So the constraints, it's not simply we moved it to the setback we need for the building height. We defined the developable area before we set even the building.
I got that. Then you inflated the building. This was your job, to inflate that building, to get as many apartments as you possibly could onto this thing, while leaving a 113-foot wide courtyard in the middle, which is considerable. So there was a place to give, but just that in order to get the number of apartments you were shooting for, you ended up here. So it wasn't a requirement, but you're there.
I think the other thing to think about too is, if you look at why there are buffer requirements in the regulations, the buffer requirement is to provide separation, in my opinion, from unlike uses. But the way they're written is it applies even from residential to residential.
Right, to take a big monolith building like this next to an apartment next to it, which is what there is. So actually, in the back of the property, who cares? The back of the apartments next door, I kind of agree that doesn't matter.
The regulations are the regulations.
But the regulations, and I wouldn't even be fussy about it back there. Right where it goes, right next to the apartment building, suddenly they're going to have this extra 4 stories above, 4.5 at some point, diminishing as you go up. As you go up the hill, it goes away. Right at the bottom, they've got 4 stories, and it'll be completely unfiltered. When the Ledges were done, they filtered the heck out of it. They've got pines and things all around it. So they actually did more than they needed to. They did a beautiful job there. We're spoiled. On this one, you kind of missed the boat in terms of softening that edge.
Can you point out the 200 feet that you're most concerned about, Mr. Zad, just so I understand exactly what the 200 feet is?
I think look at your rendering down there.
I'd like to look at the landscape plan if we can, because just the rendering sometimes doesn't get all the landscaping.
So, there you are. You can zoom it in. It's from the corner up to the edge of the parking lot.
This area right here.
Yep, and right up to, and keep on going, because you see the building to the left, that's where it is.
Yeah.
So once you get maybe 40 feet beyond that north, I can see not caring much. It is probably one of the most well-used roads in that whole complex. So 100 cars on the inside, and then over 100 cars from the Ledges that are going to be using. This is going to be a really popular road.
So from your perspective, the extent that the applicant could supplement the retaining wall and solid fencing above that retaining wall with additional greenery that would help soften along the adjacency of the building. That would be something that you would be, you would like to see.
Absolutely. It's kind of, that's what kind of fits the intent, I think. That's it. We're gonna sign off on it.
Sure.
Or how it goes on there right now, I'm not sure, but I think that's kind of a requirement. It doesn't take very many, just take a few. I mean, the requirement is to hit one every 80 feet, I believe. So it comes out to maybe 3 trees. But it'll take some doing to get them in there.
And the right trees too.
And the right tree. They want to be
You want trees that are gonna be probably taller than wider and grow quicker than slower and work in that soil.
That's right. Well, then you've got these red maples that you've got already located there, which are do great here. They're fairly long lasting and they're gorgeous during the winter, not during the fall. I don't know if exactly those will fit there in this narrow space, but
Yeah, you want to make sure about the crown not going over the property line, but I think certainly we could work with staff to supplement landscaping along the property line immediately adjacent to the HEPA building to supplement the buffer.
it could be on the property line or against the building, either one.
Okay.
It doesn't matter, so long as it's filtering what that building is.
We could certainly take a look, particularly in the area of the HEPA building, and that gives us a little bit of flexibility to work at as well. Appreciate your comment.
Just a thought. Oh, by the way, in terms of the unusual architecture, as it turns out, what was being proposed for the William Seeley School, I don't know if it's ever going to happen, looks like this. So you're getting there first because but it looks like it's the same family. So even though it seems to be remarkable and it certainly is a mismatch compared to the ledges, which I would comment on saying, not an extension, looks completely different, but we have one of these too. So this will be the one at the other end of town. And with interesting plazas and the entire thing too. You look at on the north side, that plaza up there, if you look at a shading study, by the way, because that's on the north end of the building. We've got 3 stories of apartments. The sun will never shine back there. A lot of it. So all we want to, I don't know what you can do. We can't do anything with this, but hope that was a consideration.
We can strategically place certain landscape elements into those areas.
They want a hospice or something like that, but it's gonna be mushrooms maybe. But it's gonna be garden, residents, right, yeah. And that's all I have.
So,
Yeah, I wanted to say, comment kind of along with Hal was talking about, and unfortunately, I just got rid of the page I was on, and it says there's 200 pages. I'm not gonna get there. But just one comment. I know everybody likes to say, oh, here's our list of native plantings, and when they have Chinese in the name, probably not. And so I've been talking about this for how many years now, but it just goes to show, I mean, our list really, we need an official list that really is better than this one. So anytime you're putting your trees, like Hal was talking about on that side, it'd be great if you could try to go for the Native American ones. It makes a huge difference to the other things that live around here. So thanks. That's my comment I had. I actually, it's a very interesting design. And I think it makes a lot of sense. It seems it's gonna fit, I think they're pretty well. That's the challenging area and all that. I don't think you have any other place on the property you can put the open space portion, because there is open space, what behind the ledges there, that Boulder Heights property. So that'd be nice if we could tie into that, because it's a place where the kids really like everything, but it's not gonna happen. It's a tough property. Okay, that was all.
Well, I like it. I applaud, the conservation easements, all the green space you put on the side. It just struck me weird as, a minor thing. It is the internal parking garage. how many spots approximately in that?
21.
121, and that's just one goes into and goes out of?
The access door?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, it just seemed, like bottleneck area, but that's, I'm sure you guys figured that out. And, we didn't hear anything about fire protection, but fire trucks and everything had no problem. They looked at it.
We also met with the fire marshal. One of the things that we're gonna be doing is the life safety plan for the actual building construction plans. And so we'll be working really closely with his office in terms of fire protection. So we had a staff meeting with him and then a follow-up with him on it already. So he was satisfied with what we did. We actually moved some EV spaces around at his request as well.
EV spaces?
Yeah, he's got some concerns about EV spaces in certain locations, and so we tried to work with him.
Some catches fire.
Yeah, I think the issue with lithium batteries burning an issue in some communities, so
Yeah.
he was just wanted to make sure that he had proper access to spaces that may have an
Are the EV charging in the in the underground garage or? Hold on, sorry.
They were originally, but we moved them at the request of your fire.
Good, good. Yeah.
There's really not a lot of danger with the chargers. It's just the batteries themselves there are documented cases of them igniting and are hard to put out once they.
No, that's all I had. Good job.
I didn't have any questions. Haven't been already addressed. But the lighting plan, how does that get approved?
So, I mean, I sent the draft motion out today. I mean, that is one of the conditions. Yeah, I've got other copies as well. Just that it be developed to meet the requirements of the lighting section. Including the details of cutoff lights and no spillage.
Just raise one extra thing, just because Michael's not here.
He got his bikes.
And there's bicycle charging
And they're
inside.
charging.
That's what I was going to
There
ask.
it is.
There's electrical charging on those bikes.
Inside the bicycle storage, there's play record for charging.
Yeah.
Okay.
I told them that they had to have that or he was, and then he wasn't here and I was like.
Maybe we should request a sign, Michael Kane bicycles. Does anyone have any questions for the motion? Staff have anything else to? It looks pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I mean, it's an apartment complex in an RM zone. Yeah,
With the understanding of like issue with the trees as a technical.
yes. I
And
think that
we're willing to
that's-
work with staff on that. That's very reasonable. I just want to say one final thing is that Deb reviewed this entire plan with literally nobody in her office. And she was great. She worked with us on multiple meetings, going through multiple revisions. And as usual, we couldn't ask for anything more from Deb, but I know she was really shorthanded reviewing this plan, so we really appreciate it.
So I'll make a motion to approve site plan SIT 2209 for Ledges 2 apartment at 375 Drostic Drive with the following modifications. 1, a photometric lighting plan that meets the requirements of section 8.5 3F shall be provided. 2, the conservation easement to protect the northeast area of the property shall be recorded in land records along with the final site plan. 3, existing and proposed transformers shall be screened for the requirements of section 8.1-7.d. 4, the design engineer shall certify the stormwater management system has been installed for the approved plan prior to the issuance of the certificate of site plan compliance. 5, technical items as raised by staff shall be addressed. Findings, the Planning and Zoning Commission finds that the wall, fence, and landscape plantings on the west side of the site, along with the entrance driveway, meet the intent of section 8.1-6 of the zoning regulation. That's channel 3. Is there a second?
Second.
It's moved and seconded by Elzad. Does anyone have any concerns with the motion?
Do we have to put something else in the finding? Because I kind of put in the findings that we didn't exactly find it. In detail. So,
Is that- you want-
Didn't you say that that's a technical
it's a
finding?
technical item, so I'm not quite sure how to address that, but we are not finding this right now. It's specific to the area that I said we have an issue with.
You can find it, provided that the applicant addresses additional landscaping immediately adjacent to the Apple building as a technical item.
The fact that we said it's gonna be a technical item is satisfying.
That we said it, yes, but that's not where the findings is, that we didn't find it.
Well, what are the technical items?
Maybe adding, okay, finds that the wall fencing and additional required landscape plantings.
What do you want to say? With it, and just insert after a driveway within, with.
After fence and landscaping. Finds that the wall fence and landscaping plantings, oh, I see what you mean.
The additional required.
Along
Along, right, that's it.
along
Right. That's right, that's right. Along.
oh, you want, maybe we should insert there along west side of the site with additional. And
Please say trees and landscaping. I want to see the arborvitae put in there.
You also have to have Deb approve it.
It's happened.
yeah, so that would make sense. Say planning on the west side of the site with additional trees and landscaping along the ends.
As was addressed. As will be addressed as a technical item.
No, just, I would think we just say with the additional. It needs it with additional.
All right,
Trees and landscaping.
we're still valid in the technical items.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
We're going to insert that, we need a motion to amend. We want to just agree that that's part of the original.
No, I have to say with additional because we.
No, I know, but to accomplish that, moved and seconded, we need a motion. To insert those words.
Right.
And I'll second that, and then we'll vote on the amendment. No, I need to,
Right, so
and then we'll vote on, we have a motion, I second it.
Right.
Now we can vote on the amendment,
yes.
those words inserted. Everybody agree with that? Okay. We have, so that's passed unanimously. Now we can pass the main motion as amended. Anyone else has anything else? Vote on this main motion as amended. All those for SIT 2209. Right, everybody in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion is carried unanimously.
Thank you so much for your time tonight. Hope you all get home at a reasonable hour.
Thank you. It's already passed.
Sorry for keeping you up.
More about farming.
Yeah, no,
That was about.
fertilizing.
Night, everybody.
Have safe.
All right.
Yeah, I'm sure. So, yeah.
They stick out to me. I don't agree.
Okay, moving on,
Thank you.
next item is our regular meeting schedule. That was in a package.
Put it on the calendar, so.
Yeah, some
Here it is. You want it? Yeah, I've got it ready. I've got it.
Oh, yeah.
You guys see that?
Well, does everybody have? Does anyone have any problems? in the meeting schedule? No. Well, I'll make a motion then to approve the meeting schedule for 2023, regular meeting schedule. Moved and seconded by Sue. Any discussion on the motion? We'll vote on the regular meeting schedule. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstention? Motion is carried unanimously. New applications?
None.
Referrals, do you have any?
ZBA referral.
That's the ZBA. If you have that, somebody wants to. Away from-
Yeah, that's.
But this is,
Right, so this is that side yard setback. This particular property has 2 front yards. They're asking for 23 feet from the front yard, but 25 is required to put an addition on.
does anyone have any concerns with that? Or it's a no comments?
Any addition, or is it just the corporation next door to their house?
No, it's an addition.
It says addition, but I look at it, it looks like it's a mirror image. Well, I saw the drawing.
It's the same size.
It looks like it's plugged in the windows.
Right.
It looks like it's a duplex that was already there. And it just,
Oh, you think maybe what? Oh, you mean at one time?
yeah.
Or maybe.
So now we're changing what's a front yard, what's a setback.
Because it's both, it's 24 by 24, existing and 24 by 20.
And look at the board plans, and it looks very much like they're just sort of worked it in. Which we're still fine with.
Some of those houses, I think, had a lot of structural, buildings had a lot of structural problems in my. Oh, it did, they were all on block. But some of them, I think the structure underneath them, no, they were only built as temporary. We have commission reports, we want to share. The only thing I had was that attended a district parking study meeting last week. And talking about maybe extending metered parking a little bit on gravel and Pearl Street in that area close to that Main Street. So it looks like they really want to see it. I hope it will work. Because you have kiosks that are going to take up valuable sidewalk space. And it's pretty crowded. But I think that's
on the extensions.
And I don't think anything else really came out of that. Discussions on that. I didn't have anything else. Does anyone on the commission have anything to report? Staff? Then we have the application update in the NSP report. Does anyone have any concerns with the notes? Anyone have anything else to bring up? All quiet. I make a motion for adjournment. It's moved and seconded. I assume.
Some meetings
Usually I try to use that.
Yeah.
I was afraid.
Deb Gillot was texting, he's never coming back.
Oh.
You're so.
We lost our attendee too.
I know, right? Very sad.